Hey everyone, welcome to episode 220 on the Races for and Everything. We're back after just taking a week off. I'm sorry about that, but my fault. I was just had too much on. So yeah,
Jesus, so irresponsible.
Ian, and Nolsey, and yeah, I was look.
We couldn't have picked like a worse week. we couldn't have picked a worse fucking week. Jesus Christ, retard shit. Every time we take a break, retard shit happens.
I haven't noticed that. Yeah. Well, but it's good. I mean, we always have to. We come back and we've got plenty to cover, which is good. So yeah, definitely no shortage of stuff today to get through. So yeah, let's kick it off, and we're going to start off with a general discussion on Israel and Gaza, how it relates to Australia, and the so-called rise of, well, not just anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia, because we have, I think, just one story on that, because like the ABC is trying to emphasize that now as well. Not that they're denying the existence of anti-Semitism in Australia, but I think they are trying to sort of level the playing field because they keep getting accused of like stoking anti-Jewish rhetoric and hatred and whatever. And they're trying to say, well, look, this works both ways. And, Sky News is equally guilty of vilifying Muslims. And I don't know, I guess they've got somewhat of a point. Anyway, we'll get to that one soon. What we're going to start off talking about is, well, the reaction against the Greens. So the Greens, of course, there was an article in the Jewish Quarterly condemning them, basically saying that the new anti-Semitism is a left-wing phenomenon, and particularly within the Greens Party. Even though, I mean, if you look at the global Greens movement, and remember it did start as a global movement, it's got very Jewish roots, very, very Jewish roots. I mean, a lot of it, for starters, did grow out of Marxism, which, of course, is a Jewish creation. It's sort of morphed into more of a neoliberal form nowadays. But certainly, the term watermelon, saying that green on the outside but red and socialistic on the inside, that had some truth initially. And I guess what's her name, Lee Rhiannon, the Green senator, she's sort of that ilk. But nowadays, the likes of Adam Bant and whatnot are
they're fucking green on the outside and fucking homosexual on the inside.
And yeah, that's about it. That's all it is. They're just the politics of gayness, really. But anyway, so both the Coalition and Labor have sort of united in condemnation of certain rhetoric and actions by the Greens across the country. So Labor have sort of taken this up because, well, some of their federal MPs, their electoral offices, have been targeted. So they've been not just protests, but vandalism, graffiti, and I think maybe a couple of broken windows and stuff has happened at a couple of offices now. Of course, there was that huge protest where they had to lock the doors at the Labor Party conference for the Victorian branch about 3 weeks ago. Important to point out there, though, that a lot of that was actually started or prompted by unionists who are members of the Labor Party, not of the Greens Party. And they're basically just upset that federal Labor is not taking up the Palestinian cause as much as they would like them to. And yeah, I mean, besides a little bit of rhetoric and, like telling Israel to restrain itself and whatnot, it's definitely fair to say that the Labor Party is still on the side of Israel. We can harp on all we want about Anthony Albanese's history as a Palestinian activist. Shari Markson on Sky News. She's a Jewish presenter. She wears a Star of David around her neck, actually. She's got a necklace of the Star of David. She's been doing like these long, like 10, 15-minute segments, like trying to fully expose the Palestinian activist roots of Anthony Albanese, like going back to his university days and everything. But, funnily enough, Albo does not deny any of that. In fact, he makes reference to it in question time. And he made the point when he said that the Greens Party is just going too far now with the rhetoric because it is stirring up action, which is resulting in vandalism and whatnot.
And they're about to find out, they can like basically like Greens as an extension in Get Up. You can harass politicians, you can fucking beat members of the public, start violent protests. That you can do all of that and get away with it. Maybe get a slap on the wrist and be like, "Oh, you've been a little naughty. Maybe you should apologize," and just never apologize. But now it's actually kind of funny looking at these far left like influencers and talking heads in both the media, domestically and internationally, kind of realizing, or kind of like trying to circle around the fact that like they're realizing that they criticize Jews.
Yeah, and I mean, like the Greens are. I think they are to an extent taking the accusations of anti-Semitism seriously, which is why in that recent by-election, oh man, I'm sorry, I forget where it was, but the Greens ran a Jewish candidate, and I think that was very intentional. And it was a pro-Palestinian Jewish candidate as well, who was out there saying, taking up the Palestinian cause does not mean you're anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. Look at me, I'm a Jew and I support it. So, yeah, the Greens are somewhat.
I'm a Jew and I'm in front of it.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, again, like I make the point, the Greens movement was at least initially a very Jewish movement. And I mean, who's the leader of the Greens in America? It's Jill Stein, for God's sake. And they have had plenty of Jewish members in Australia as well. I think it's just, it is sort of Jewish paranoia because, look, it's fair to say, like, anti-Zionism, I've said many times, I do not think should necessarily be seen as anti-Semitism, because therefore you would have to then say that Adam Band is some kind of a neo-Nazi, and I don't think any of us would draw that conclusion. Yeah, or Roger Waters or something. You'd have to call him a neo-Nazi, or at least an anti-Semite. However, that doesn't mean that people don't eventually make the connection. And if you are constantly pointing out the war crimes that Israel is committing at the moment in Gaza, that is inevitably going to make some people say, hey, maybe this is an ethnic issue. Maybe this is a Jewish problem and is, to a large extent, driven by Jewish identity and Jewish behavior. And that's why you have to, go after the Greens, because I guess whether we like it or not, and I certainly find it disappointing, the Greens are the most visible party at the moment critiquing Israel. I mean, I hate to say it, maybe in the 90s, One Nation would have done it. But, what's Pauline Hanson doing now? She's turning up in the Senate with a scarf of the Israeli flag around her neck. So it is unfortunately the Greens who are making that
predictable behavior from retard boomer.
Right. So the Jewish Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, of course, kind of, came out agreeing with Peter Dutton and talking about the Greens' rhetoric and how it's too fiery and everything. I'll read one quote here from him. He said, "I think that the Greens political party, and particularly the leader of the Greens political party, have got something to answer for here. The way they have been encouraging criminal damage of MPs' electoral offices, encouraging really riotous behaviour, sometimes violent behaviour. That has been occurring outside electoral offices." So in response to that, Adam Ban actually said that his lawyers have written to Mark Dreyfus telling him that they view those comments as defamatory. Worth pointing out that Mark Dreyfus did not say that in Parliament. He said that in a television interview. So he's not subject to parliamentary privilege at that stage. Of course, if he said it in Parliament, you would not be able to sue him. Parliamentary privilege forbids that. So that means that, I don't know, this just might be an empty threat right now. Very often when lawyers send papers, that basically just means don't say it again. If you say it again, we may well issue a writ against you, but we'll see. I honestly
This is a
can't
warning.
imagine.
Don't be a naughty boy.
Yeah, basically. But I can't imagine Adam Ban really fighting that out in court.
No.
Okay, so someone else who has commented on this is former Prime Minister John Howard. So he said that
Taking Israel's dick right in his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been doing it from the beginning, and he basically said it's the Labor Party's fault for the rise in anti-Semitism that we're seeing. And well, actually, I'll just quickly say my comment on that is I actually don't think anti-Semitism has risen since October 7. I think it's merely just become visible. Through the protests, through some of the rhetoric and things people have been saying, but it's not like this just happened in a vacuum. I mean, when yes, some people were saying pro-Hamas things, or saying or not condemning in the fullest of terms what happened on October 7, that was a reflection of attitudes that they had already formed on Israel and Jews. They were already there. It just simply made the whole issue more public and more visible, and therefore what people
and then
think
suddenly, for no reason,
and Jews,
for no reason whatsoever,
right? And yeah, people keep saying people want, or on Sky News they'll say they always just want to ignore the fact that Hamas started this on October 7. To which my response is, what, do you think it actually started there? Do you? Like, this all started on October 7 with Hamas's, like what, hold on. They weren't responding to anything? That attack wasn't inspired or motivated in any way by actions of the Israelis?
And then for no reason, those dirty fucking Arabs attacked us on October 7th. Dude, that one Russian proverb, like a Jew will tell you what happened to him, but not why.
Right. Okay, so John Howard has said that it's nice to see that there is this sort of joint condemnation of both the Greens and anti-Semitism by the coalition and the Labor Party. But he's saying, all right, you need to go one step further now. And that is, you've got to join Peter Dutton in putting the Greens last on the how to vote cards. So Peter Dutton has said that the coalition, or at least the Liberal Party, will be putting them last. And Howard is saying that Labor should do the same. And remember that this is the same Prime Minister who put One Nation last on his how to vote cards back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So, again, sort of reflecting that view that, racism, however defined, has, say, shifted from One Nation and other, more fringe right parties, or whatever you want to call them, into the Greens instead, into the New Left, into the environmental neoliberal left, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, no.
Which I still say
totally not. Yeah. Totally not when they're like, from the very get-go when they were fucking defaming white people. No, that's not when the racism started.
No, and I mean, all the Greens are doing, I wouldn't even say it is like the most mainstream critique of Zionism. It might be the most mainstream critique of Israel and their military actions that we have in political discourse at this stage, but I don't think they say very, very little about, what some of their supporters in private might refer to as apartheid policies by Israel. You won't catch Adam Ban dead referring to Israel as an apartheid state, or calling them an ethnocracy, or some kind of ethno-state. He won't do that. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's not even a critique of Zionism. It's simply a critique of Israeli policy when it comes to the Palestinian territories. That's it. It doesn't go any further than that. Now, unfortunately, this is coming from, say, well, like another example is Mike Kelly, who is a former Labor MP. I think Eden Monaro was his seat, and this was one of the very few Labor MPs that I didn't mind. Let's say I still wasn't crazy about him or anything, but like he was a war veteran. He actually was kind of forced into an early retirement because of dehydration on various postings, I think in Afghanistan, that left him with permanent kidney damage, which
Yep,
that's where I learned about
will
that.
do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's irreversible basically at that stage. So he had to retire for ill health. But yeah, he's actually calling on his party to do the exact same thing and put the Greens last. Now, I got to say also, this wouldn't have, the last few elections, I think I have put the Greens last anyway. When I fill out my ballot, it's nothing to do with any of this. It's to do with all of their pro-gay, pro-immigrant, pro-drug policies that I find reprehensible. And it's just such a shame that we don't have another political alternative. I mean, we've got the very, very minor parties, like, say, micro parties like Australia First, who will make an anti-Zionist critique. Yeah. But, I mean, let's face it, what chance have they got of even getting a Senate spot? It's just not going to happen. They're not even going to get a council
Fucking none.
No. So we just don't have that at the moment, which is disappointing. I mean, especially given, if you look at some of the results that we're seeing in Europe right now and how continental Europe, at least, is drifting in a bit more of a nationalist direction. And maybe even the UK is, because I know that Labour tips to be, the next government and whatever, but that's just more the fact that people who traditionally support the Tory party don't see them as like a real conservative party anymore, which is why Nigel Farage's Reform Party is, doing very well and actually outperforming the Tories in many parts of the UK now, which is interesting.
Yeah, Thomas Blair and Joel were talking about that last night.
I listened
basically, like, how kind of it was ideal that we're seeing the destruction of the Conservative Party, which is a talking point that we've harped on quite a bit. But yeah, can't believe whose criticism it was. I believe it was some Jewish institution that basically said, like, hey, like left-leaning Jews, we kind of need to keep the right intact because they are a bulwark against like a racialized or more serious nationalism.
Yes, and I mean, in the UK, Jews do tend to vote Conservative, as they do here in Australia. America is somewhat of an anomaly in that I think it's about 70% vote Democrat, 30% Republican, thereabouts. It's pretty much the other way around in countries like Australia and the UK and parts of Europe too, I believe. So another thing Adam Ban is being attacked over is he's refusing to say whether convicted terrorists held by the Israeli government should be among those released. Now, of course, Israeli jails hold literally thousands of Palestinian prisoners, many of whom, of course, are described as political prisoners. A lot of them described as terrorists. It might just be because of their membership in Hamas or something like that.
Dude, occasionally they just pick a motherfucker up off the street and then like just throw him in jail as like a bargaining tool for later.
Yeah, that's right. Which is part of why Hamas took as many hostages as they did, and they have actually successfully had some of those prisoners released in a hostage exchange. So, it did work out. And it does show when you just kind of capture the other side's people, their civilians, or sometimes their military personnel. Yeah, they're used as bargaining chips. So it's not like Israel hasn't done that. Of course they have. So yeah, Adam Ban is basically just saying, well, look, I don't know, like I want a number of political prisoners released, and some of them may be convicted terrorists, but we just don't know. We're not sure. I mean, some of those that are called convicted terrorists simply are not. It's just that the Israeli government label them as such. So yeah, I can't believe I'm sitting here actually defending some of the things Adam Ban has been saying. Anyway, let's
weird shit makes weird bedfellows of us all. More specifically, Jewish shit.
You know, look, classic adage that we like to use: agreeing with liberals for the wrong reasons, or in this case, agreeing with greenies for the wrong reasons.
Agreeing with homosexuals.
Yeah, like I said, they will not attack Israel based on ethnic lines.
No.
They're doing it just simply looking at it from a military point of view, which is fine. I mean, that's a starting point, and a lot of people, I think, are starting there. They're seeing on the news the horrific things that are happening in Gaza every day, and from there, some of them take the extra step and say, okay, maybe this is actually a result of Jewish behavior that is causing all of this. Okay, so other stuff on the whole conflict. Well, this was interesting. TRWOE Forrest, one of Australia's richest people, of course, so the head of Fortescue Metals, he's offered to build and install automated gates at the Gaza border crossings in order to improve the flow of aid into the region. Okay, well, I can tell you right now, TRWOE, you're not going to be allowed to do that. The idea of having automated gates at a heavily militarized point that the Israelis control and, are not going to relinquish any form of that control ever. There's no way they're going to permit automated gates to be that. So you can kiss that idea goodbye. And I mean, dare I say that TRWOE Forrest knows that as well. I think that's just a bit of virtue signaling on his side. He has committed aid money, but apparently some of it goes to Israel as well. So like victims of October 7. He likes to kind of play both sides and just say he's on the side of humanity. Okay, so backbencher Julian Leeser, the former Shadow Attorney General, he was pushing for a judicial inquiry into anti-Semitism on university campuses. Of course, we are getting an inquiry into racism generally on university campuses, which I think will basically morph into having a focus on anti-Semitism in the end, because that's what everyone is pushing for.
Well, dude, fucking did you see the inquiry that they did over in the States? And it was literally like some Jewish student at some place like felt I think there was like multiple of them across the States. They said they felt unsafe on campus, and they had a federally backed fucking investigation into all of these fucking universities. And it like resulted in obviously expulsions and whatnot, and fucking like literally like basically threatening tenured professors who protested on the behalf of Palestine. Literally a federal fucking level thing. And then basically people would just bring up the fact that it's like, you do know that like fucking white people have been violently accosted on United States college campuses for quite some time, like decades at this point.
Yeah, I know that there's been a number of expulsions as well in Australian universities because of the encampments. But also remember, it's the coalition policy now to deport them if they're here like on a student visa or something like that, and they're a pro-Palestinian activist. They're pointing to certain sections in the Migration Act where you can be removed from the country for like, upsetting the social order, something like that. I forget what the words say exactly.
They use the same fucking like law that they used to like ban like fucking Richard Spencer or like fucking Jared Taylor from this country.
Right. Oh yeah, and I mean like they've banned others like David Irving, for example. They basically banned what's his name, David Icke. I don't know if you remember that, like about 3-4 years ago.
Mr.
They banned
Reptile.
David Icke from coming in. Yeah, because some people think that when he talks about reptiles, he's really talking about Jews. By the way, he's not. When he talks about lizards, he literally means lizards. He's that much off his head, David Icke. I mean, he used to say he was the son of God.
Jesus Christ.
He did. You can still watch the interviews on YouTube, I think on Wogan or something. But anyway, Julie and Lisa was pushing for an inquiry to be started like right now because we're on like the winter break for university, and he was saying that we desperately needed like a very kind of quick, intense inquiry before semester 2 starts up again. Now, while this was the private members bill, of course, that was rejected, and there's no parliamentary debate going to be on it. That doesn't mean we haven't had plenty of debate in Parliament about university campuses and potential inquiries and whatnot. But Mark Butler, for example, paid tribute to what Julie and Lisa wanted, and also said like it was a great response to the appalling rise of anti-Semitism since October 7. So they're still, in spirit supporting what Julie and Lisa wants. I think it was basically just a bit impractical to have it so quickly. So I don't think we're going to get it for a few months, possibly not until the beginning of next year. And yeah, I bet it'll have a focus on anti-Semitism, and it'll also have a focus on Aborigines too, because they'll want to talk about how few Aborigines go to university. And you know that body count song where Ice-T says there are more black men in prison than there are in college? I don't know if many people know that body count line like I do. But that's actually not true in America. But in Australia it is. There are more Aborigines in jail than there are in university. So they'll definitely have a focus on that too, I bet. Okay. Oh, right. So there's also now calls from, we're still talking about Julie and Lisa here, but this is bipartisan because you've also got Josh Burns, who is the young Jewish backbencher for Labor. They're now saying that all of these universities, if they really want to stand against what is perceived to be the rise of anti-Semitism on their campuses, they all must adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance definition of anti-Semitism. So
it pops its head up again. It pops its fucking head up again.
Look, we've done this. We've gone through these points a number of times on this show. So I'll just say, Google the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and have a read of the points.
Short and skinny. You cannot criticize Jews for anything, even if they've done something. You cannot criticize them for it. If Israel does something, you can't say it's bad. And if you say literally, basically, it extends to the nation state of fucking Israel.
Yeah, and also, it also extends to blaming Jews for the actions of Israel. Right? I mean, work your head around that one.
Damn if you do, damn if you don't. Can't criticize them for anything. If you criticize the geopolitical strategy of Israel, you're an anti-Semite. If you say Israel is a Jewish country, you're an anti-Semite. If you accuse a Jew of actually correctly accusing them of doing something that is wrong or wrongdoing, that is anti-Semitism.
Yeah. So it's not. You look at it. It's not really a definition of anti-Semitism because there's so many contradictory components of it. What it effectively is speech control. It's basically saying you're not allowed to say these things about Israeli Jews. That's what it is. Now, so far, there are 5 campuses in Australia that have formally adopted that definition. Now, the reason why, most of them have not adopted it, is because what would that actually do for academic freedom when it comes to universities publishing papers, which of course is one of the main functions of universities, and all of a sudden they're bound by this definition of anti-Semitism? they would have to severely restrict what they would be allowed to say in, published peer review articles that they produce. So, that's probably the main reason why universities have been so reluctant to do that.
Yeah.
And with reason too. It would just kind of silence them when it comes to any kind of critique of Israel. Not of Jews. I mean, they never write anything like, say, what Kevin McDonald does, but they will criticize Israel. Okay. So look, the protests are still continuing. We've actually had a couple of pro-Israeli ones lately, but those, of course, are rarer than the Palestinian ones. And so recently that was because they rescued 4 Israeli hostages. I believe that actually came at the cost of around 260 Palestinian lives, though.
Yeah, they bombed a fucking market. they bombed a market and food storage area as a distraction, not even like as like the target. They literally just chose this place as a distraction. Right.
So I mean, it's interesting when you have that. I don't know, do the maths on that, but like 4 lives compared to 260.
50% fucking civilian casualty rate. I don't know, 50 times civilian casualty rate.
That is what they're coming out celebrating. I mean, they keep accusing the pro-Palestinian side of coming out celebrating, Hamas and October 7. But, when they score like a big kill count against the Palestinians, they come out and basically celebrate that,
Yep.
So it's complete hypocrisy. Oh, yeah, and so the last story we got, this is the one I mentioned at the beginning, and that is police are investigating graffiti's anti-Palestinian and Islamophobic slurs that were found on a Melbourne resident's driveway. So the ABC points out, and I'll read from this article, they say, the attack comes amid a spike of Islamophobic and anti-Palestinian hate incidents reported across the country in recent months, according to the Islamophobia Register. Yeah, I've been hearing a little bit more from them lately. So, yeah, I mean, I guess they are kind of right. It goes both ways. There was that burger joint set on fire, remember?
Yes.
Which is owned by a Palestinian activist, a man of Palestinian heritage. And but anyway, this graffiti that they found on concrete pavement in Melbourne said "Death to Palestine," and then I don't know if you've got the link up, Nolsey, they spray painted, I guess, what sort of look like swastikas, but they're some of the worst drawn swastikas I've ever seen. In fact, you might even say that they're construction markers or something like that Sarah Silverman gets confused with.
Yeah, that's fucking hilarious.
So I don't know. Sometimes when I see stuff like this, I wonder if it's false flag stuff. Not that there isn't that stuff on the Jewish side, obviously, with what you do in rabbi type stuff going on. But I wouldn't put it past Muslims either. Faking it as well. But no, I do agree with the ABC though that it does run both ways. That I hate the term Islamophobia, like because phobia means an irrational fear. It's just such a silly term to use.
Well, it's not silly. They're basically trying to belittle anyone that is accused of it. Because if it's just like just anti-Islam stuff, you could actually probably argue on the grounds like, hey, look, there's actually legitimate reasons to be like anti-Islam and whatnot. But if phobia just means like you're a little man, you're scared of this stuff, and it's like, I'm not scared. I hate you. You disgust me.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, when it comes to the breakdown of social cohesion in the country, it is working both ways. Some people like us don't want either in our country, would rather they go back home. I'll still form convenient alliances in the short term or whatever.
Yep.
Which, for me is obviously with the Palestinian side. But ultimately, you got to go back. I still want you to go back at some stage. Okay, let's move on to talking about Peter Costello. I don't really have any notes for this, so I'm just going to kind of riff on this a bit. So he was, of course, confronted at Canberra airport after he just got off apparently a long flight. He was confronted by a journalist from The Australian, and he was being asked about. I must admit, I didn't even know about this at the time, but apparently the Nine Network is sort of embroiled in a sexual harassment / misconduct scandal right now.
It's a company with a lot of journalists, so a lot of women. So you're gonna have like fucking sexual scandals, like anyway.
I guess so, but the guy involved, it was, Darren Wick. So he was the former senior executive at Nine. He recently resigned because he was accused of sexually harassing several female staff, as far as I know. So that's what it was. This is the kind of news that doesn't really cross my radar too much. But then I saw, of course, the footage of Costello when he was being asked about this, as the journalist was filming him and like walking backwards. It really does look like Costello shoved this guy, like shouldered him, and knocked him to the ground. Apparently, he caused some damage to the camera equipment in the process. Now, Costello has denied it, or at least I saw a press conference where he denied it. He said the guy was merely walking backwards and didn't notice that there was something behind him, and he just tripped over it. And he was like, I've seen that, many times, like journalists do that, which is true. I've seen footage of that as well, where journalists don't just they're not keeping a lookout for what they've got behind them. However, if you watch the footage, Costello clearly quickens his pace towards the guy, and it looks like he shoves his right shoulder into him. And I mean, by the time the guy falls over, Costello's face and body is fully in frame. It looks like he's pressed up right up against the guy. So certainly, just going from that footage, it looks like he shoved him. But there were several witnesses as well. One of whom said it was an aggressive shoulder shove by Costello. So it's been pointed out, of course, that because this happened at an airport, there would be plenty of security
CCTV
cameras, footage of it. But last I Googled on this, that hasn't been released, which is I find a little unusual considering this happened nearly a week ago now.
But he's resigned, and he said he was already going to resign.
I didn't mention that. So on, I think, Friday night or something, he resigned. It was not long after. It was like a couple of days after, I think, the incident, which was weird because, up until then, there wasn't even really, pressure on Costello to resign, or at least I hadn't noticed that. It was only after this confrontation where he very foolishly went and shoved this guy, assaulted this guy. It looks like. I could be wrong, but all the evidence looks like it points that way.
Yeah, I was going to say, he said he was going to resign towards the end of the year anyway. Honestly, if that was your plan, that was since.
I saw that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that was sincerely, the reason, why even be around for this to deal with the sexual harassment shit? You probably would have left earlier.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you're leaving because of stress or stress of confrontation, and that fucking Jesus Christ, you assaulted journalists, and all the other journalists are going to fucking pissy cry about it. Yeah, okay, but you probably you would have left because of the stress of the fucking sexual harassment scandal.
Right. Yeah, and look, as to the veracity of the claims about Darren Wick and everything, I have no idea. I just don't follow this stuff closely enough to come up with anything. I just say, my default position on all these things is just kind of show me the proof, because very often people do just make shit up. So.
But then again, journalists are like mercenaries. It doesn't matter how much you rough them up. I never feel bad.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to climate and energy. So I think the big story for the past week here was that the coalition are not going to set a 2030 emissions reduction target. They, of course, do have a 2050 target, which is net zero, just like Labor. The Greens, I think, want net zero by 2035. They used to say 2030. I mean, that's just an absolute pipe dream, though. So I think this was a wise move by Dutton. He is making the point that, say, the targets that have been set by Labor, which is 43% by 2030. Actually, if you were to meet that target by then, you would look at destroying significant parts of the economy and many small businesses closing. And, well, I mean, what people care most about, of course, is just power bills going up. I mean, we've seen already with the lunatic green policies that we have passed, power prices just skyrocketing. So that's why I say I think this is a wise move from Dutton. He's reading it right here, and that he knows these targets are not going to be popular because of rising power prices. That's also why I say, I'm predicting a teal wipeout come May next year or whenever we have the election, because people are blaming the teals for a lot of this, and that's why the teals are not doing well in polls. Now, that doesn't mean everyone in the coalition is happy about this. Bridget Archer, the maverick from Tasmania, she's come out and said that not making this target is regressive, and also saying that there should be details of an alternative target. Some people have said, maybe they should instead set a 2035 target. Now, Dutton actually since went and commented on that as well. He rejected that because on the Labor side anyway, I don't think they have an official figure yet for 2035, but the figure they're floating around is between 65 and 75%. And again, Dutton is just saying that is too unrealistic. Now, the one thing, though, I will agree with, the likes of Bridget Archer on, is that, yes, you are actually unlikely to meet the 2050 target of net zero without interim targets, without more short-term, 2030, 2035, 2040 targets in the meantime. I agree with that, definitely, because obviously you've got to have a plan. You've got to do this in increments or anything. But that is why they should just scrap the 2050 target altogether. Just get rid of that too. And this is the step that Dutton seems to be unwilling to take. I guess just because it was cemented in as coalition policy. But I don't understand this. Like, if you can say you'll scrap a 2030 target, if you will actually go full pro-nuclear as they have now, we've read out polling numbers showing that is popular. Roughly 2/3 of the Australian public support the establishment of nuclear reactors in the country. Then why not go that extra step and just say, all right, we're scrapping the 2050 target too? Why not do that?
Yeah. If we go nuclear, we basically hit the target. I know that some fucking French or whatever fucking bureaucrat on whatever board that, oversees this will fucking chuck a hissy fit and piss himself and cry. But yeah, we will be a green country if that's the case. If that's what you truly care about, which it really isn't what these people truly care about, if they're being honest. Yeah.
Right. Now, here's a story I read in the ABC, which I was surprised the ABC covered this. So it is this guy, you probably haven't heard of him, because I hadn't heard of him either. His name is Stephen, Nowakowski. Sounds like a Polish name. So this is a guy who actually is a long-term environmental activist. He points out that he has been arrested and, doing things like chaining himself to trees and that. He also once ran for the Greens. But now he is a campaigner against wind turbines. And he does so still from an environmentalist point of view. He points out the damage that it does to wildlife, particularly birds, of course, many of whom just fly into these things and kill themselves. But he also just points out that, they're inconvenient. You need to have a lot of them. They're very big.
Yeah.
They take up an enormous amount of land. And obviously that has its own environmental impact too. And he's actually doing a speaking tour at the moment with, I think, so federal MP Colin Boyce. He's a backbencher, and he's said to be of the hard right, or ultra conservative, as the ABC describe him in this article. But yeah, they're doing this speaking tour where they're actually advocating the burning of more coal in favour of wind turbines. So It's funny, because the guy from one of the co-founders of Greenpeace is now this big pro-nuclear activist. There's actually many examples of this, of these people who started off as environmental activists. And then if you ask them, are you still an environmentalist? They'll say, yes, definitely I am. But if you look at power sources like nuclear, they are environmentally friendly because they don't have any CO2 emissions. And also, on the flip side of that, many green energy projects are bad for the environment, such as wind turbines and their effects on bird populations. So they still actually see it from an environmental point of view. It's just that
it's not an industry approved, point of view.
Right. And I'd also
it's a Sierra Club from the 70s, not a Sierra Club from the early aughts, environmental view.
Yeah. You also find that with these guys, these are genuine guys who like getting in touch with nature. They live in regional areas. They do things like they go out hiking and stuff like that. Whereas your typical greenie is an inner city trendy who never does anything like that. They've never even slept in a tent before, So that's the other part of it too, I think.
They have slept with men, though.
Yeah, yes, they have. Okay. So WA. Hard to believe that the next WA election is actually only 9 months away. There's actually a lot of state and territory elections on the way. Now, they're probably still not going to win. I think that's sort of known. They're basically planning further ahead to win the election after, and I think they want their leader to be Basil Zempilas. That's the long-term plan. But anyway, they want to streamline the environmental approvals process in Australia, in WA, sorry. So they would do that by amending the Environmental Protection Act, allowing parallel approvals to reduce delays, moves aimed at speeding up decisions on appeals not considered as significant and strategic, and cutting down on challenges from vexatious appeals. Yeah, that's an interesting one. They're talking about green lawfare there, how projects are able to be delayed inevitably by all of these challenges, court challenges. And a lot of the time, it's just time wasting. They know that there's no actual grounds to the challenge. And, that is a principle in law that, if you have a vexatious claim, then, in some cases that's a criminal offense. You're just trying to buy into the legal system and waste time. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. So, yeah, the Liberals are sort of trying to sell themselves as going against the green tape here. And to an extent, they're actually also going against gender ideology as well, because they reacted to that. Remember that report that came out from the UK a few weeks ago, talking about gender transition among children and how things like puberty blockers and all the various medical interventions
Fuck this shit up bad.
Yeah, so they said that they wanted to ban it for anyone under 18. Now I know that's not quite going into based territory, but it's a hell of a lot better than what they had before. I mean, gender transition surgery should just be banned outright, in my view.
It's just mutilation. That's what it is.
There were days where you just had to take a trip to Thailand. That was the only place you could get it done. Went those days. And now, I mean, it is just medical mutilation. And the fact that an industry is made of that and a lot of, specialist surgeons are enriched by that, I think is a very sad phenomenon. And I'm really looking forward to all the class action lawsuits brought against them by, children who were mutilated by them and then they turn 18 and they regret it. And there's already a few, by the way. And I hope those surgeons get absolutely cleaned out. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So in Queensland, they're not proceeding with a proposed pumped hydro project. Now, unfortunately, it's not that good because they're just talking about like the major flagship project, which was announced by Palaszczuk when she was premier. They still do support small-scale pumped hydro. They won't kind of throw it all out in one go. They're just saying, the more wasteful, bigger projects, they're not going to go to the election with this year. I still think they'll win. We've got a bit on the Queensland budget a bit later, but really, like incredibly, David Christodoulou, the opposition leader, just basically accepted the Labor budget wholesale, and some are saying that he basically didn't even read it. So he's far from a perfect leader, but I do think he's likely to be the next premier.
I'm here to lead, not to read.
Yeah.
We need more illiterate politicians. I need more chaos in my government. I need more fucking freak moments.
All right, so let us now talk about our favorite topic, immigration. We've got some numbers for you. This was I was really reading mixed messages here. Like, I couldn't tell if the Australian was saying this was good or bad, but anyway. These come from the ABC and the Australian. The ABC always thinks immigration is good. But anyway, migration added just over 100,000 people to Australia's population in the last 3 months of 2023. So that's according to new official figures that are, casting doubt on the government's own forecast. So the December quarter of 2023, so the last 3 months, net migration was 107,300 people. Now, that apparently is lower than the year before, but it is, of course, not low enough to meet Treasury's projection in last month's budget, which is 395,000 people, net migration, that is, for the full financial year about to end, so 2023 to 2024. No, definitely not. And I must point out here, I remember covering when we got the figures for January and February, that both January and February were record months for levels of net migration into Australia.
Yeah.
So even though the December quarter of 2023 might have been lower than that of 2022, we actually ramped up immigration in the first quarter of 2024. So, I mean, what do you make of that?
Oh, wow. I mean, didn't they came up with a statistic that for the close of the year 2023, we basically nearly brought in 1 million people.
Right. Now, data for half of that financial year of 2023 to 2024 is currently at 252,000 people, which is well past the halfway mark. So given the fact, like I just said, that we had record months in January and February, definitely we are not going to meet the Treasury's projection of 395,000 people. It's going to be way beyond that. Okay, so let's give you some other figures here. So, okay, so I had two different sets of figures here, actually. Now, because of the fact that we've got figures for the December quarter now, that means we've got figures in total for 2023, the full calendar year, not the financial year, but the calendar year. So I read one source. Actually, I think both of these came from the Australian. So one of them put it at 547,300 people. And then the other figure I read was 651,200. Now, I'm sorry, I don't know why there is that discrepancy, given that both of these articles actually came from the Australian. But, given the figures that we've read time and time again, I definitely think that the figure close to 650,000 would be the most accurate or the more accurate for the calendar year of 2023, which, of course, is a record. No doubt. We're actually talking well in excess of 500,000 people in 1 year. Not a surprise that we have a housing crisis and a rent crisis and a general cost of living crisis here, and a crisis of social cohesion and social capital. It's got nothing to do with October 7 or anything. We just notice the breakdown of social cohesion a bit more now. That's all. The huge levels of migration have been breaking it down for decades in this country. Now, apparently, the coalition is seizing on this and saying, look, they're the only party that is willing to reduce the numbers. And, of course, they trot out the fact that they want to take the permanent migration cap from 185,000 to 140,000. Okay, what's their target on reducing net migration? Well, guess what? They don't have one. Okay, so that just means fucking nothing. Okay, because you reduce the amount of permanent residency, all that happens is temporary visa grants go up. That's it. That's the only difference. You're not actually reducing the amount of people in the country.
And then it's like, oh god, we're trying to deport them, but they're not cooperating. When that temporary visa eventually levels out, and then you have a sob story, and then they're just given PR anyway.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, also, the Australian population has now reached 27 million people, and primary driver of that population boost was immigration.
Indians, infinity Indians.
If you want to be more specific about it, then yeah, that's probably. Oh God.
Some days I wake up and I cry.
All right, so we covered last episode that the government did bow to pressure and said they were going to scrap Directive 99, which of course was a directive issued to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal when it came to considering the cancellation of visas. And basically meant even if they have an extensive criminal history, if they have family and other ties in Australia, like just holding a job here, that needs to be weighed against their criminal record. That resulted in many cancellations of visas being overturned, and some very sick individuals being left to stay in Australia, murderers, rapists, etc. That forced Andrew Giles to then basically all of those ones that made it to the media, of those serious criminals who had their visas reinstated. Andrew Giles then had to move in and then use his ministerial power to cancel all of those visas. Of course, he had to with the public pressure that was on him. But anyway, Directive 99 is still in place until July the 1st, so another 2 weeks, new financial year, of course. And that's going to be replaced with Directive 110. And that basically means that public safety has to be the paramount concern when it comes to cancellation of visas. So even though family ties or connections in Australia still has to be considered, the more weight has to be afforded to the consideration of public safety. So yeah, that will naturally mean that more visas are cancelled. Now, a country that does not like this, I think I forgot to mention this on the last episode, but one of the reasons why we got Direction 99 was because of New Zealand. Because we just keep deporting like Maori criminals and that who never bothered to like take out Australian citizenship in Australia. So we just, cancelled their visa and sent them back to New Zealand.
Yep.
New Zealand, in a way, sort of felt like they were a dumping ground for criminals. It's been pointed out that Israel. New Zealand does the exact same thing.
I personally blame everything on Israel.
Yeah, like they do it with Tongans as well, because they get a lot of Tongan immigration, and of course there's a high crime rate coming from people of Tongan extraction. And by the way, a lot of the people that we have been sending back to New Zealand are also Tongan, because they go to New Zealand first and then they go to Australia. So I mean, what would actually make everything what would make us play nicely with New Zealand would be if both countries actually just had a hard line on immigration. That meaning that if we just didn't take their Maoris in the first place, and they didn't take Tongans in the first place that end up in Australia, these problems wouldn't be here to begin with. New Zealand would still have to deal with its Maori population, of course, and Australia's still got to deal with its Aboriginal population. But those are our individual responsibilities. I'm certainly not going to say that, Aborigines aren't our responsibility. Of course they are. But yeah, I don't give a shit if New Zealand is sad by this because, well, Australia first. And the guy pissed off about it, Winston Peters. It's weird. He always manages to get a ministerial role, even though he's not a member of the party. He's not a member of the Labor Party, but he always manages to get a ministerial role in immigration. It's very unusual how it works over there. But he's actually half Maori himself. But he's most hardline immigration politician, or at least, politician with power and clout in New Zealand that they have. He's this half Maori guy. And yeah, he doesn't like the fact that we keep sending violent Maoris and Tongans back to New Zealand. Well, sorry, we have to.
I'm returning my Polynesian slaves. I might get a store credit. Buy myself Indians.
So there were a couple of sob stories that were posted in the ABC and elsewhere. I couldn't believe this. I'll read the title of this ABC story. It says, "These immigrants are leaving Australia because of the high cost of living." And in this case, they're profiling a Bulgarian woman and her husband. They want to move back to Bulgaria. Now, here,
that should really tell you how shit everything is if fucking Bulgarians are moving back. Bulgaria is like a fucking highly modded GTA instance.
Yeah, but then this other one, I don't know if you saw it in one of the Telegram chats that we were in. It was pointed out that this 20-year-old Romanian girl is also facing deportation. She came here when she was 10 years old, and similar kind of thing. She never bothered to take out visas properly and that kind of stuff, and now she's got to go back.
Yeah.
But then there's this other one. This was fucking horrific. So again, from the ABC here. Never heard of this guy, but he is a Ugandan-born boxer called Regan Simbwa, I think.
The fuck?
Now, he is dating an Australian woman, white woman. He's engaged to be married to her. In fact, you might want to have a look at this story if you haven't already, Nolsey, just to see the photo here. But yeah, he's engaged to a mud shark. They have a little genetic mess of a mulatto child as well. And they're having a cry because this guy went to Thailand, to Bangkok to qualify for the Olympics as a boxer. But now he is stuck there because he's waiting for his Australian partner visa to be approved. Well, I just say wait there a bit longer.
Fucking Christ.
That will get approved eventually. I mean...
It will.
His bona fides are obviously there. He's got a fucking genetic wretched child with this woman. So, yeah, dude, wait a bit. And I guarantee you that visa will be approved.
Yep.
That's it. So why the fuck is this a sob story? Why should I have to feel sorry for him? I would just wish that you and your mutant child and your mud shark fiance would just go to some island for outcasts. Is where I'd
that child is proof that God is either impotent to right the wrongs in his creation, or he is completely unaware of the horrors that go on inside of his kingdom.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, God.
Okay, now, Green Senator David Shoebridge said that the government, the proposed laws that, of course, are like stalled in the Senate at the moment, the emergency laws that would allow, basically make it easier to cancel visas and send back people who would otherwise end up in indefinite detention. David Shoebridge said that the other day in the Senate that would allow Trump-style travel bans. And the ABC said that's a fair call, actually. So the travel bans, if you remember, like people called it a Muslim ban, I recall, where he blacklisted a whole bunch of countries that tended to be Muslim majority countries. There were still widespread exemptions for all of those countries. And how long did that last, I might add? But actually, the most important thing to keep in mind here is, remember, this is at the discretion of Andrew Giles, or whoever the immigration minister may be soon, because Andrew Giles might be pushed out of the job. I cannot imagine the Labor Party actually putting in Trump-style travel bans, even if the legislation allowed them to do so. I just can't see it happening.
No.
Okay, now here's one of the reasons I say. Actually, screw that. No, the Murdoch press generally is pro-immigration, I think.
Yes.
Maybe they want to reduce, say, Muslim immigration because of the rapid rise of anti-Semitism. But in general, no, they don't. In fact, they talk up ramping it up when it comes to skilled migration. Actually, well, this sort of leads into the other story I've got here, which is Peter Dutton's reduced permanent migration program would carve out for builders and be guided by a revamped skills priority list targeting high-demand trade jobs to drive construction. So again, even though he wants to reduce permanent migration, he wants to increase it in temporary migration or certain areas of temporary migration. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's not how any of this shit is actually going to fucking work. We all know why there's a fuck ton of Turks in Germany, don't we?
Of course, right. And yeah, I mean, I acknowledge that we have a skills crisis here, but there's actually no, we have a skills shortage, not a crisis. there's no reason why we can't fix it domestically. We can't rejig things right now. And, as we always say, just pay people more.
But Finian, if we fix it domestically, how are you going to find a class of worker that we can exploit mercilessly?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is why it's
my Indian slaves.
When Adam Bant says that the rich intentionally shits on migrants and blames the housing crisis on migrants, it's a load of crap. The Chamber of Commerce and other business lobbies are perhaps the biggest supporters of mass migration into this country, and they are definitely some of the biggest lobbyists for mass migration into the country. And look, and here's another example here. So, so this one of these bloody credit groups, they're called S&P Global Ratings, have said that the caps to international students that are being proposed by Labor, I think this is something they're bringing to the next election. Right now, they're just kind of slowing down the application process. What I read was roughly 24% less applicants are being approved now. But anyway, this credit rating group says that caps to international students threatens to unravel a thriving industry and will put the credit ratings of the biggest universities at risk. Fucking good. I don't care.
Yes,
I mean, you're by thriving, you mean a big industry? Yeah, it is. It's about $40 billion a year. It's a big industry. And it is enriching people who are merely profiting by swamping this country with detestable migrants. So,
look,
why the fuck is that
one of those things?
Why are these people I should care about enriching?
Yeah, no, fuck them. Honestly, fuck them. Kiss them. Get your soft hands on them and kiss them and fuck them. But no, seriously, you're talking about a class of people, a class of bureaucrats and administrators that are literally turning once prized institutions of learning and qualification into nothing more than a Mumbai degree mill. And when I say Mumbai degree mill, I both mean in color of student and fucking institutional integrity.
Yeah, and I mean, you're always degrading the value of a degree or whatever qualification you get. It means less and less. Yeah, especially with the Pajeets that are coming over here and basically just paying for their degrees. And yeah, that's what universities have become.
Yeah, I think it was Joel, Blair, and Tom were basically talking about hey, look, if they can actually fucking take if they physically can take the hit for hiring an Indian, you bet they're gonna fucking hire an Indian.
Of course, look out for all those industrial accidents on the way from hiring the civil engineers.
We've already seen a handful, actually. We've already seen a handful of projects actually get pushed back because they hired an Indian who quote unquote can speak English but actually can't read English.
All right.
I've seen about 5 of those happen just recently.
Okay, so the skills minister, Brendan O'Connor, is saying that there are a lot of what he calls gaping holes in Peter Dutton's migration plan. So he's specifically referring to the skills priority list because Labor has been attacked for not including enough of the in-demand trades when it comes to prioritizing visas. Now, some of that, I think it is actually fair to say, is because of union pressure, because obviously unions know that the more and more of those people you let in, the more and more competition there is for those in the trades of the members that they represent. So that's part of it. But again, it's I don't care. You get enough of them in those trades, you get enough of them earning good money, and quite naturally, the domestic workforce will say, well, that looks like a good job. I think I'll go through the training required to get it. That's how you can fill the jobs, okay? Simply make the jobs appealing and pay well. That's all. And yes, that would cost the Chamber of Commerce more money. And good. All right. National security. So, yeah, just a few quick stories here. So, this guy, oh God, Fayez Hattahat, probably saying that wrong. So this was a guy who was sentenced to 5 years in jail back in December 2022. He pleaded guilty for fighting with terrorist groups in Syria, I assume ISIS. He challenged that sentence because of Commonwealth laws making it harder for convicted terrorism offenders being granted parole. And well, that went all the way to the High Court, and they ruled that that sentence was indeed appropriate. So yeah, good. We still are, jailing these foreign fighters who end up coming back to Australia. I'm not sure about this guy, but I know that they do tend to be Lebanese, even though they go and fight with ISIS and whatnot over in Syria. They tend to be Lebs who, previously were drug dealers wearing Kappa tracksuits, and then they have like a religious awakening when they get a little older, and they want to go wage holy war.
I remember that being a talking point of like Islam apologists was like, oh, look at them, they lived a haram lifestyle, they can't be considered Muslim, they're just terrorists, like don't equate Islam with them. It's just like, well, you do know there's a thing where like they live a degenerate lifestyle, and then basically they have a coming to Allah moment, and like under the tenets of Islam, as it is a warrior religion, martyring yourself and destroying and killing the infidel is actually a religious sacrament.
Peter Hitchens, I remember he said something really retarded on this. He actually said that like smoking marijuana basically like causes terrorism. And his reason for that was because a lot of these ISIS fighters used to smoke weed. But really, no. What it is like where you said they live a degenerate lifestyle, they end up regretting it, and then they look to replace it with something that is, more civil, like religion. And I mean, that happens with, a lot of people. And it doesn't just happen with Muslims. Like a lot of Christians, look at all like the rock stars who turn to Jesus. They talk about how they, like slept with all these women and did all these drugs, and it led to emptiness in their life, and they're like, I got to do something, I got to change, I got to go through some form of radical change, and so they find religion. That's what they do. And unfortunately, with a lot of these guys, when they find religion, that means, well, I've got to go wage jihad over in Syria.
My coming to God moment was when I stopped asking thugs for their price and started asking them to go away.
Now, in that case, I'm like, you know what? Actually, I kind of support your right to do that. I'm glad you got off the weed and everything. But when you go over to Syria, you got to stay there. Okay? That's the only part I have to digress on, okay? You just got to stay there.
Don't let Miss Sufi fucking hear you saying that. Oh, God.
When we interviewed Syrian girl, this is where she disagreed with us. She's like, no, they're Australia's responsibility. Fuck off.
Okay, we'll pay for the bullets to execute them. Is that a good compromise?
I guess, yeah. That sounds very Chinese. Don't they do? They bill you for the family for the bullets and they execute someone?
Yeah. I mean, that was pretty old. That was like back in the day when they were like running off of like Chinese nationalist military surplus.
They still do it.
That's You got a lot of dead policy in China. I'm pretty sure that's what that's called. It's like dead policy, which is like it's like literally like fucking like straight up Mao era policy, but it's still running in modern day China.
Okay. All right. So the coalition wants our intelligence bodies like ASIO to issue annual threat assessments on Chinese foreign interference. So they're referring to what they call Beijing's relentless propaganda operations. That actually has a lot to do with TikTok, because is it run by the Chinese? TikTok?
Currently, yeah, just because like they basically like the deal more or less kind of like did a slow falling out for it to be bought up by an American company.
Right.
But yeah, no, basically like it's still going to happen anyway. Like I believe that TDS actually covered like a lot of Jews are basically just ready. They've already like put the money together to actually purchase it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is so look, James Patterson, who's the opposition Home Affairs minister, he made this announcement the other night. But he's also the guy who was leading the charge to ban TikTok, basically because he considers it to be a platform of Chinese propaganda, brainwashing Australians, which is silly.
It's meant to make you retarded. Like
Stop
if you've
Chinese
seen TikTok.
coming here and buying up our property. All
Yeah,
right,
well, that's
real.
I'm more concerned about that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck really about TikTok or. I mean, what Chinese propaganda is influencing Australians other than like Chinese people who live here?
It's not fucking Chinese. The Chinese don't want fucking proselytize to fucking anyone. Okay. What TikTok does in the West is it makes people fucking retarded. It makes people insufferable and retarded. That's why they got a different algorithm for TikTok in China. TikTok in China, I've said this before. It boosts like academic and athletic performance and skills building and education. That's what TikTok in China is. TikTok in the rest of the world is skibbity fucking gat riz, look at me twerk, and fucking like look at this borderline softcore pornography.
Yeah, that's how I always. Whenever I saw clips of it, I've never had a TikTok account, but yeah.
And if I fucking hear any of those words, any of those goddamn Zoomer words again, I'm going to fucking stick my fist so far up someone's ass they're going to be called a fucking Jim Henderson Muppet.
All right, so the last story on national security is, well, Kevin Rudd, who is, of course, our ambassador to America, he says there is a rapidly unfolding change in Xi Jinping's Taiwan strategy. So he said he's seen this over Beijing's increase in its use of grey zone tactics. That is to advance the goal of reunification with Taiwan by 2049. So the Australian referred to him here as Dr. Rudd. I don't think Rudd has a PhD, does he?
Unless they're referring I don't think so.
Yeah, I've never seen him referred to as Dr. Rudd before. But anyway, the grey zone tactics are coercive actions by a state that fall below the threshold of open conflict. So that would be things like provocative military operations, or the sonar attack that they did on an Australian submarine, stuff like that, where they just sort of.
Oh, he got an honorary degree from basically they boosted his bachelor's in Chinese studies, and then basically he got an honorific doctorate.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that does not make you a doctor.
No.
An honorary degree is not a real degree.
You've got an honorary degree in Chinese studies. There we go. What a fucking fag.
Yeah. It's not a real degree. You're not a real doctor. Anyway, he said that those grey zone tactics that, sort of teeter on the brink of like skirmish conflicts could eventually escalate into a broader blockade or even military invasion of Taiwan. Every now and then, Rudd likes to make these comments. He considers himself to be like the foremost expert on all things China, I think.
He literally got like a fucking undergraduate in fucking Chinese studies. There's probably some fucking political major that's probably more qualified to talk on this than him.
Well, that's why, he speaks fluent Mandarin. And whenever he goes to China, he makes his speeches in Mandarin. And they're always like really impressed when that happens, because they're like, "Oh, look, a white person speaking Mandarin. That's incredible."
Yeah.
Okay, let's get on to the economy and cost of living. Now, it's official. The last Australian quarter, so the first 3 months of 2024, grew by 0.1%. Over the last financial year, it only grew 1.1%. Now, that is about as, teetering on the edge of recession as you can get. Although I do think you need 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. I think that is how they define a recession in Australia. I could be wrong, but I believe it's 2 consecutive quarters. So 6 months of economic contraction is required. Now, Jim Chalmers, the treasurer, is saying that it was not a surprise to see that the economy is barely growing. But, of course, he says that we're doing better than many other countries. So he said the primary cause of this very weak growth was higher interest rates combined with moderating but persistent inflation and ongoing global uncertainty. But any growth is welcome in the domestic and global circumstances we confront. So in other words, he's saying, okay, yeah, it's a very small level of growth, but we should still be thankful for it because other countries are not doing so well. So, yeah, I mean, what little growth we do have is obviously being propped up by the record amounts of migration. Now, remember the figures we read at the beginning of the show? The calendar year of 2023 would have been around 650,000 people net migration in this country. And that was only enough to give us a total of 1.1% in growth. And in the last quarter, 0.1%.
Well, I'll put this on top as well, like because there's a way of quote unquote stimulating growth in a company by devaluation of currency. Some countries actually do this on purpose. It's basically, if you're a business, you have to have some kind of asset. So that can either be like the value of work that your staff put out on services, or that can be like, the machines you have in fabrication or the tools you have in construction. You can actually simulate completely false but completely true on paper growth by devaluating the currency. And our currency, the Australian dollar is currently worth shit.
Yeah, it's bugger all.
Yeah.
And, dare I repeat, we've been in a per capita recession for possibly a decade now. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice just to read out those numbers just to show that how horrific, actually, it really is. I mean, we have, for all intents and purposes, been in a recession for a very long time. But now, with all the statistical tricks that they use at the ABS, they can't even cover up how bad things are getting in this country. So it says a lot. Now, Anglicare, which is an Anglican charity, of course, they just released its annual cost of living index. They revealed that people on welfare payments are struggling to get by, often struggling to buy essential items like food and rent and petrol. And they've said that, not a surprise, the biggest living cost for them was housing, was rent. And that makes them, in turn, they're struggling to buy food, petrol, etc. Yeah, not surprising. So they've called on the government to raise the rate of job seeker and other payments, including rent assistance as well. Well, okay, maybe short-term solution. It's also a secondary solution. It doesn't get to the root of the problem. Migration is the root of the problem. Okay, start dealing with that. And I'm sorry, but most Christian churches are very pro-refugee and pro-migrant, generally speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm not being anti-Christian, but it's just a fact. Particularly the fucking Anglican Church, which is extraordinarily cucky. Although, it's funny, every now and then you get somewhat of a based Anglican preacher here in Australia, but for the most part, they're weak as piss.
Probably what's worse is Pentecostal.
Yeah, that's Scott Morrison's lot, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's incredibly
I'm
fucking.
pretty sure.
Anyway, let's not fucking start salami slicing with the denominations yet.
No, we don't need to do that. But I'll just say, social justice and refugee rights, unfortunately, tend to be issues that churches care about. Even if they
Mm.
might be, traditional on issues like homosexuality and whatever. Unfortunately, generally speaking, on migration, no, they're not. They're not any good. Um, okay, now again, like when it comes to the cost of living crisis, the coalition is talking about uh, skilling the country. Now, this policy here, believe it or not to do with migration, not to do with just importing more in demand trades. This is actually something, well, I think I might be in agreement with, and that is a skills in school policy that was around during the Howard years. And this was about not simply focusing on technical skills in TAFE, but actually doing more of it in high school as well. I
All
agree.
right.
Why not? Yeah, start doing. I mean, in a hell of a lot of cases, you're better off studying. I don't know, woodwork or something in high school rather than history. I don't know, economics, whatever, because that will help you become a carpenter
Rather than Dick and
later on.
Anus studies.
Yes, and that could mean possibly even things like you could finish your apprenticeship sooner. What if you actually take on a lot of those skills while you're in high school? Yeah, definitely. That can turn you into a tradesman quicker. Then I say, why not? So that
Important
is
skills
sort
like teaching the apprentice to blow into your interlock for you.
of, now. I mean, look, I still
But shit, I'm sorry.
I actually I when it comes to Labor's policy on fee-free TAFE, I'm not opposed to that either. I actually think that's good. Making TAFE affordable, particularly in areas where we do have
Like,
skills shortages, because yes, that is one of them.
honestly, a tradesman is an investment into the country. Just from like a wide or top down look at things, you're talking about someone who is actually going to pay like one, going to create infrastructure and therefore value within the country by their works, and two, will be paying taxes on the wage end, which are rightfully decent.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of the people that we import from other countries have done things like drop out of high school when they were 14 and then take on a trade. Then, you know, nowadays pretty much everyone tends to finish year 12. So okay, fine. Sometimes they might even be 18 when they graduate high school. That's okay, but what if they learned a lot of those trade skills during that time? They'd have a head start once they actually get out of high school after that. So, yeah, I don't have any problem teaching this stuff younger. But I also don't have a problem with then offering these TAFE courses for free once they do get out of high school.
Yeah.
I just hope that then they can finish those courses quicker. That's all. All right, so on to housing. As if you needed one, but we've got another study that's come out, shows that Australian capitals rank among the world's most unaffordable markets for middle income buyers. So it looked at markets in 94 cities around 8 countries, and nearly all Australian capitals ranked in the lowest 25% for affordability. And then, like the ABC points out, the study pointed primarily to policies to free up land for development. And remember, that doesn't always just mean, freeing up a plot of land and saying, okay, now you can develop there. It also means things like, this existing development, now you can
Yeah.
subdivide and you build
I
100-story
want to,
buildings.
the Pew Research Institute, the one that actually kind of like fucking gets filtered into political think tanks and then actually gets filtered into like fucking black letter law in countries.
Yeah, I do.
They released a study last month, basically just belly aching that like, oh, Australia is like, the housing, all of housing in Australia isn't actually dense enough. And then they said like, oh, Australia's housing isn't dense enough because our cities don't have the same density as London or New York. Have you ever been to London or New York?
Yeah, fuck that. Classic examples of
I was
places
in Manhattan. I
nice
was
to
in
visit.
Manhattan for a fucking week, and I think my soul left my body. I was a husk of a human being leaving that place.
No, I mean I have been to London, and I've been to Amsterdam as well. Is very like everyone lives in
Yeah.
apartments there as well.
On a,
And
on my
these
first night in London, I heard a woman get raped outside my hotel.
you heard a woman get raped.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Did you like call the police?
Yes. Yeah. I heard. Well, I was like a fucking kid. I think my dad like basically called down to the reception. Was just like, "Hey, what the fuck is going on?" Because I just heard screaming, and it turns out, yeah, someone had just like raped a woman in an alleyway next to the hotel.
Fuck, man.
And my hotel room was like basically like fucking like I'm not even joking. The room that I was in with the bed like made fucking Harry Potter's Under the Stairs abode look spacious. Like London is a fucking shithole.
Oh yeah, no, it's awful. I mean, like it's good, like tourist attractions and stuff. Like when I went there, I
Yeah.
was only there for like 3 days, and I enjoyed myself. But at the same
In
time,
my
I was looking
opinion,
at I was always thinking, there's no way I'd like to live here. No way.
oh yeah. I was gonna say the Germans should have made like a fucking Gustav gun the size like the Warhammer 40k and fucking wiped that motherfucker off the face of the map.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Annabelle Chong. She was the woman who set a world record for having sex with the most amount of men in a day. Um, she there's a documentary on her called "Sex: The Annabelle Chong Story." I recommend it because it'll show you just how fucked up the porn industry is. But anyway, what is interesting when you watch that documentary is it's got a part where she talks about how she got raped. She was actually gang raped by a bunch of blacks in an alleyway in London. And then what a surprise that she went on to do this disgusting porn later on because it just totally messed her up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
Hatred for London, but also density of housing or housing density.
Yeah. So look, that was like what this study like. It emphasized policies on development. That's all. It didn't talk about immigration at all. Oh, they love doing that, don't they?
Well, one makes money and the other one doesn't. That's the reason why. What one might actually repair white communities, and the other one will completely and utterly irreparably destroy them, and that's the real reason why.
Okay, so in the Gold Coast, short-term accommodation is set to be much more expensive because there's going to be a threefold rate hike by the councils there. So, wow. And I assume there would be a flow-on effect. Obviously, I mean, people live in the Gold Coast too. It's not all just for holiday makers. So it's even more bad news there. Now, still in Queensland, there's a plan to build a 75-story high-density apartment block there. And surprisingly, though, it is receiving opposition from the Greens. Now, you'd think this actually ticks the Greens boxes here. I mean, because for starters, they don't want to reduce the amount of migration whatsoever. They'll just tell you that we need rent controls. That's their solution to it. And tax cuts to the wealthy property owners need to be cut, things like that. But anyway, this development that was trying to be pushed through by Labor kind of like sped up the process here for developers to build the building on the exchange given here. Basically was that 20% of these developments have to be social or affordable housing. So, that means you'd be bound to get some bad neighbors, unfortunately, if you lived in this this estate. But yeah, you see, they're rushing the development process, right? The Greens don't like that. They always insist that all of the green tape needs to be completely adhered to. So even when it comes to social and affordable housing, the Greens are saying no, because developers are sort of being given an easy ride here. They don't have to tick all the boxes when it comes to the green regulations. So, but again, I just like, my issue isn't any of that stuff. My issue is just like, I want less migrants and I want us to live in spacious housing, please. I don't want us to be bunched into 75-story buildings, like fucking animals. So green with Greens for the wrong reasons, I guess, or for different reasons.
I'm looking at fucking apartments at this point. I'm looking at getting an apartment, and I really don't want to, because I fucking hate living in boxes.
We covered that story on housing affordability about a month ago, that showed that housing demand and prices was still way outstripping that of apartments. But the gap between the two was starting to close, because people were reluctantly then looking at apartments. They don't want to live in them, but they're basically left with no other choice because they can't afford anything else.
I sold a property. I can't afford a property. I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? Oh, Jesus Christ.
So we're going to move on to industrial relations now. We've got some interesting ones here. So first of all, look, the CFMEU in Victoria have got some beefs going on. So does the Transport Workers Union. So look, I'll get the less exciting one out of the way first. So the TRWOE is going up against Virgin Australia because they're, the current front runner to the airline's chief executive job is like said to be some anti-union guy. That's all.
Okay.
They don't like that. Now, the Transport Workers Union doesn't have the same kind of industrial muscle that the CFMEU does. So I don't know if any kind of union campaign against a Virgin Australia would amount to anything here. However, when it comes to the CFMEU, they've sort of declared war on the AFL. And this one looks like it will be more interesting and will have some real-life effect. So what this is about is, if you're wondering, what the hell has the AFL got to do with the CFMEU? So they've just appointed this guy called Stephen McBurney as the head of its umpiring. I don't really know what that means, head of umpiring, like what that job entails. But anyway,
head of being verbally accosted by fucking by the fans.
Apparently, he did work as an umpire, and he has umpired a number, like hundreds of AFL games before. But it's not that John Setka and the CFMEU are upset about. This guy used to be the head of the Australian Building Construction Commission, the ABCC. I think I got that acronym right. I hope I did. But anyway, that is the building industry watchdog that has not entirely been abolished, but its powers have been diluted by Labor because, of course, union pressure. They wanted them to outright abolish it, but they didn't quite get there. But anyway, Stephen McBurney is said to have cost the CFMEU millions of dollars because he did refer a number of industrial matters to the industrial umpire, and the union was fined for various acts of illegal industrial action. So they've got a huge axe to grind with this guy. So they've said, what do they? Yeah, they refer to this as a work to rule policy. I'm not exactly sure what this means. I assume it would just be in the form of strikes and other forms of industrial action. But they're saying that they're going to cause a lot of trouble on the construction of the Hobart
Malicious compliance.
Stadium.
That's what it is. It's just malicious compliance. Yeah.
Okay.
Follow the official work rules and hours exactly in order to reduce output and efficiency, especially as a form of industrial action.
Okay.
So basically, overly legalize every single step of your work process until you basically grind to a halt.
Okay. So they just it's like they add red tape to the process and slow everything down and make it unproductive. Yeah. So we all know, the controversial Hobart Stadium being constructed sort of in tandem with the creation of the Tasmanian Devils. So that's Tasmania actually get their own AFL team, who don't actually enter the league till 2027 or something ridiculous. I don't know why it's taking that long. But anyway, they are starting the construction of the stadium soon. And yeah, the CFMEU is basically saying, sack this guy or we're going to wreak havoc on this construction site. So since then, Albanese has, of course, condemned this. He points out that he did expel John Sepke from the Labour Party a number of years ago, back when he was opposition leader. And Sepke said that he's going to show Albanese who is fucking boss. That's a quote that he made. He was using a lot of fiery language when it came to all of this.
Let's see who's boss of this, Jim.
Yeah, and he said that the CFMEU has every right to go after anti-union fuckers, I believe is what he said.
I like it. Got some fiery language. Really got the blood going here.
He's a Croat who definitely tells it like it is.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
He doesn't treat his wife very nicely. Or his ex-wife.
I don't care. Can you tell me what is the impedance, the motivation of German people when they go to Croatian beaches to fucking strip down naked?
That I can't say I've thought about very much, man.
Every single day, buddy. Every single day. Why, Hans? Why are you naked?
But look, no, this is interesting. I've definitely got the popcorn out for this one. I want to see how this ends.
Now this is good reality television.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the other bit of IR news, just quickly, the ACTU is calling for an end of what are called junior pay rates. That basically means you can pay below the minimum age for people who are under 18. I can't remember how it works. I think if you're 14 and 9 months, that's the legal age of being allowed to work in Australia. And then so for each year, 14, 15, 16, 17, you can be paid a certain amount lower than the minimum wage. And that's known as...
you can be the youngest and most exploitable young child, in which case you get cash from your parents and they make you do dumb shit.
So, I mean, that's why when you go to Macca's or whatever, everyone there is a teenager who's serving you. And that's why, because I know that, for example, in Paris, in France, I'm just thinking of Paris because this is where I saw it. When I was on holiday there, I remember being really surprised to walk into fast food places and see that all these adults were working there.
Yeah,
flipping burgers and stuff.
There's a McDonald's at the end of the Champs-Élysées, and I remember going in there when I was a late teenager because I was the last time I went to France. And I was just why the fuck am I being served by a dude in his mid-20s?
Yeah, man, when the one I was at, I remember seeing people in their 40s. It was weird. And And
Shit.
then I can't remember who I asked about it, but they're like, oh yeah, it's because they get the same amount of money as teenagers do. I was like, oh, okay. The ACTU basically want to bring that in here, and so that would also apply to apprenticeships and whatnot. Look, I don't know. Of course, the business lobby doesn't like that. They say that would put a lot of young people out of work. Look, I don't know. I think there is something to be said about, look, if you're a teenager, you more than likely live at home. So you don't have things like, regular bills and everything to worry about. And, it is sort of like it's that stepping stone of, from going from high school into work. You have part-time work and then eventually into full-time work. So, yeah, I got to say, I don't know if I agree with the union on this. Like, it probably is fair to sort of incentivize employers to hire more young people so that they make sure they do get that early start.
Just thinking ahead, thinking to the future of all these things is like just making an advocacy case for the union, a case that the union would not actually take up themselves. But as you see, like the degradation of standards of living, practice, and institutions within this country, I think we're probably going to return to a work relationship for the youth similar to that of like fucking like a 12-year-old boy during the start of the Industrial Revolution. Like I think that focus on like higher forms of education as they become more and more useless in a decaying, regressing society. You're going to see entry into the workforce and entry into much more menial forms of the workforce increase as we go forwards.
Of course, and obviously putting them up against all the brown labour we're importing isn't doing them any good either. So, that, I mean, God, why isn't the ACTU focusing on that, for Christ's sake? I mean, they focus on migration a little bit, only when it comes to, like, say, keeping out some skilled trades or whatever, or just sort of making it a little harder for them to get a visa. But that's really it. That's all they'll talk about.
It's not even like you have to do like some kind of weird ideological thing, which unions have to do from time to time, where they're like talk about like, oh, you have to show solidarity or something like that, and only through like this type of bargaining can we fix this type of specific labor issue. It's quite literally an A equals B and B equals C type rationale for explaining collapse in that way. It's super fucking simple. But again, unfortunately, the unions aren't exactly controlled by people who would, consider that just from an ideological standpoint.
It's controlled by some lesbian with a mullet.
Yeah.
Sally McManus, that is, the ACTU secretary. Okay, anyway, we'll get on to Aborigines now. Another one of our favourite topics. So... Oh, geez. So South Australia's Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People found that in a single calendar year, 1 in 2 South Australian Aboriginal children are reported at least once to child protection authorities, and 1 in 10 are placed in out-of-home care. That, of course, has led people to conclude that there is still what they call systemic racism and discrimination against Aboriginal people simply in the system in South Australia. That is putting an unfair focus on taking them away from their parents, putting them into out-of-home care or eventually into foster care or what we used to call orphanages. So, yeah, it made 42 findings and 32 recommendations.
Remember, and, one of the minimum limits for the female children in the stolen generation was sexual assault.
Yes.
That was a minimum, not a maximum. I'm just going to put that on the table.
Yeah, and Aboriginal people are less likely to die in jail. I must put that out there as well. Yeah, so look, dare I say, now I know those numbers seem pretty damning. So that was 1 in 2 Aboriginal children are reported at least once to child protection authorities. 1 in 10 are placed in out-of-home care. I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers are actually, like, should be worse than that. Like,
Yep.
in other words, a lot of the time they're not being reported or not being put in out-of-home care because people are afraid of being accused of perpetrating another stolen generation.
Stolen generator. Um, no, yeah. Again, like I'm listening to those numbers and I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's a non-reporting bias here. Like, if you've seen an Aboriginal community,
Yeah.
if you've seen an Aboriginal family, if you've seen the actual dynamic that goes on there, um, yeah. Like, I remember I used to visit my late brother, in a area of WA that used to be an Aboriginal community. It's like, like Mirrabooka, like one of those types. They used to be an Aboriginal community, but like now it kind of isn't. Well, it used to be like government West housing and therefore full of Aboriginals, but now it's just full of Muslims. Um, but yeah, no, I remember visiting my brother where he lived in a flat with some of his friends, and just quite literally just seeing the Aboriginal fucking mother like beat the ever loving brakes off of a small Aboriginal boy until he wasn't responsive, and then like literally having the neighbors call the ambulance to go and like actually fucking check to see if the fucking kid has a fucking TBI.
Oh yeah, it's horrific.
If
And
you,
yeah,
if
I
you
mean,
want to if you want a case for if you want like evidence for the case that God is dead, just look at Aboriginals.
well, they don't even really. We're off topic here, but yeah, I mean, they don't even really have a god in their so-called religious beliefs. They just have like evil spirits that they blame for bad things happening. Like whenever someone dies, they say that some kind of evil spirit, usually from a rival tribe, is responsible for it, and then you have to go and seek revenge on that tribe.
Yeah, the
Okay,
rainbow serpent, it turns out, is just the dick of your Aboriginal uncle when you're a 13-year-old.
all right. So over in the Northern Territory, of course, the board of Australia's largest Aboriginal legal service should be immediately, quote, hosed out and replaced with competent directors. So this was one of the judges over in the Northern Territory, but also Jacinta Price has been calling on this to happen as well. So this is the I'm sorry I don't have what this acronym stands for, but the NAAJA, which is the leading legal service for Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory, has, what a surprise, just been pissing up its funds and not really delivering any kind of outcomes at all. So, it's there to kind of provide legal aid for Aboriginal people who can't afford it. And apparently the money is just being squandered, and as usual, is just sort of being spent by the people who run the place rather than actually where it's supposed to go. So now it was also revealed that the chair, Hugh Woodbury, had served a 12-month good behaviour bond and was fined $200 for standing on his pregnant partner's stomach, slamming her arm in a door, and repeatedly yelling degrading slurs at her in front of their 2-year-old child. So this was the guy who was newly appointed as the chair of this legal service. Charming. Okay, last bit of A news here. Federal MP Marion, oh God, how do you say this? Scrimgeour. She was an Aboriginal.
Scrimgeour looks about right.
She was an Aboriginal MP. She's actually been accused by Lydia Thorpe, under parliamentary privilege, of course, of squandering around $400,000 of COVID stimulus funding. This was back when she was chief executive of the Northern Land Council in the Northern Territory. Yeah. And this was 400K COVID stimulus spending, and the government, of course, handed out a lot of these type of packages to, all sorts of groups that did include these land council groups, Aboriginal corporations and NGOs, etc. And apparently, she used this money, the 400K, to build a holiday house in Twin Hill Station. So, look, these accusations are coming from Lydia Thorpe, so obviously press X to doubt, but, this is one of these stories where I just wouldn't be surprised either way. An Aboriginal MP siphoning 400 grand to build a house. Why would that be any less believable than Jacob Zuma in South Africa funneling millions of dollars to pay for renovations on his mansion, which did happen, by the way. That's just third world politics. That's how it works.
That's just how they be.
System. Yeah,
it do be like that.
Is that from that Black Science Man meme with Neil deGrasse Tyson? Is that what you're?
That's just from blacks in general, man. That's Ebonics.
Blacks in general. All right. Okay. On to crime, the thoroughly related topic. So, here in WA, the Corruption and Crime Commission has found that there is no evidence of serious misconduct among the staff that were working the night Cleveland Dodd self-harmed and committed suicide. So he, of course, was the first juvenile death in custody in WA that happened at the notorious Unit 18 at Casuarina Prison, which is our maximum security prison. So the report said the facility was trapped in a cycle of destruction, with staff set up to fail and left to judge the severity of hundreds of self-harm threats for themselves. So they were kind of saying that there was just so much trouble and self-harm going on that it was hard to know, when there was a genuine threat of suicide or whatever happening there. So yeah, I don't know. You reckon this guy was actually bashed up, though, don't you? Or you've heard information saying that.
I heard from a CO that was the case.
Right.
Yeah, because they beat the fucking piss out of each other all the time.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. But the thing is, not normally it's just a fucking a school, a worst case, a schoolyard fight, just a little bit more feral, right? The problem is that as it is right now, they did actually put some fucking long-term offenders in there who are there for stabbing and basically attempted murder.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Remember, the ones in Unit 18, yes, they are juveniles. Some of them are over 18. Some of them are over 18. They're adults, and it was just that they were sentenced as juveniles, and their sentence overlapped into their adult years. And they were the worst of the worst offenders that Banksia Hill had. And that's why they wanted to put them in an adult prison where you've actually got proper prison guards who carry, handcuffs and pepper spray and stuff like that. Ordinary youth guards do not carry those items. So, yeah, it's not going to be a surprise that unit is going to be a little bit more volatile. But, what's the alternative? Were they supposed to just leave them in Banksia Hill where they would be assaulting staff all the time?
Yeah, well, I guess we just have to deal with that. We have to deal with these little ferals.
Yeah. Okay, so just a quick story in Queensland. They just sort of moved to close like an administrative bungle with the state's parole board. Apparently, some of them were not appointed with the proper process. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it would actually mean that some of the decisions that the parole board would go to make would be invalidated. So that means, like, let's say if they denied someone parole, they could have that decision invalidated and someone could go free. So that was a bit of an embarrassing bungle for the Queensland government, but they quickly moved to fix that. Okay, on domestic violence, there is now a federal domestic violence expert panel. So this was recently formed by the Albanese government, but they're under fire because there is apparently not a First Nations woman sitting on that panel. In fact, there's no First Nations woman at all. First Nations person at all on the panel. So they're just saying that does therefore not make it representative. I don't know if that would make a difference, to be honest. And I don't know if this panel, in any way, shape, or form, is going to make a difference. I actually do agree that domestic violence in this country is probably going up. I do agree that it is obviously out of control in Indigenous communities, but I don't see what this panel is going to do about it. And I don't see why an Aboriginal appointed to that panel would do anything about it either. So, yeah, I mean, like the ABC in this article, they point out here that Aboriginal women are 33 times more likely to be hospitalised for family violence injuries. And they put that in there as if that fact alone is simply just meant to mean, okay, therefore we need an Aboriginal woman on this panel. It's like, yeah, I know that sounds pretty accurate to me. I wouldn't dispute that for a second. But so what? That's just because Aboriginal people are very violent. That's all. All right. Let's move on to the issue of drugs. So let me share audio here for a sec because I've got a new ad that was launched by the federal government. And this is the first ever anti-vaping ad.
We just did it casually at the start.
But we started buying our own and doing it in private. Or was it in secret?
When did it become compulsive? Necessary, even.
Maybe it's time to ask. Why are we still doing this?
Now, I wish this is not a video show.
Yeah.
This makes me want to go back and do the live shows again. Maybe we will do.
We need to fucking do it. I want to invite some Americans on and turn into an absolute shit show.
Well,
that'd be fucking hilarious.
I still want more of a Australian-oriented show.
Oh yeah.
But I encourage people, if you can, go watch that ad on YouTube or wherever, because there's one white girl in it and that's it. All the rest are these weird genetic mystery meat messes. And they're just always so careful to include that representation in government ads these days. Anyway, when it comes to the message of it, look, I guess I'm not knocking that. I do think vaping is a problem. I think that, the nature of it with the way it's marketed, and also the fact that they used to have it with fruit flavors and all that kind of shit did mean that it was targeted to, younger people and to girls as well, in the same way that vodka cruisers are targeted at females. So yeah, I mean, I've got
that was fucking hilarious. I still remember when vodka cruisers were cheap as fuck, and my fucking older sister, I think she was a part of that age group of girls that actually ruined cheap vodka cruisers for everyone. Because Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, okay, yes, now they have the Alco Pops tax, which, by the way, that still applies to bourbon premixes as well. Jack Daniel's Coke, those kind of things.
Vodka sodas.
Yeah, but at the time, man, that was I'm pretty sure that was the Gillard government, and that was when they went into deficit because of the stimulus spending of the GFC. They were looking to plug the budget deficit at that point, and they were dressing it up as like, oh no, we're just thinking about the poor teenage girls who do themselves damage by drinking vodka cruises and everything. And the very interesting thing about that was when they introduced that tax, sales of like what do you call it? Like just bottles of vodka, not premixes, but just the straight spirits.
Straight bottles, yeah.
That went up. And the studies always showed that when like young people mix the drinks themselves, they put more alcohol in it than what actually comes in the premixes. So it didn't do any good at all. In fact, it made it worse because they were just buying the proper bottles of vodka and mixing their own drinks. So, yeah. Anyway, that's a diversion. So Mark Butler, who is the health minister, says that roughly 1 in 6 high school students and 1 in 4 people aged 18 to 24 are vaping. So ABC did a fact check on that, and they rated it as in the ballpark. Now, I've looked at some fact checks that have been pretty dodgy from the ABC before, but I don't know. That one sounds accurate enough. I do notice like teenagers in school uniforms and that, you see them, they might be just hanging around outside Macca's or something. They like the vapes, I know a lot of them are just kind of showing off and whatnot. But, yeah, you definitely do see it a lot. Okay, here's a quick story just to demonstrate how your foreign aid money is being spent. So, unfortunately, I didn't get a figure on the cost of this, but in March, we actually just gifted a patrol boat to Fiji. And, that is the tip of the iceberg in terms of how much money.
Oh, yeah. This is fucking hilarious.
Yeah. So this is, I want to say a patrol boat. I mean like a big, huge vessel, millions of dollars worth, definitely. Like I said, I don't have a price tag for it, but you have a look at the thing. It is obviously in the millions of dollars. So we gave this to them in March, but it just went on its maiden voyage. So right during its maiden voyage, so the first time they've ever taken this thing out, it has actually hit a reef. And so this is on Fiji's remote group of islands in a passage that local witnesses have described as treacherous. So now Fiji's Navy is conducting a recovery operation, but with the help of Australia. So I'm sure that's basically just the Australian Navy almost entirely saying, Jesus, okay, so that boat we fucking spent millions of dollars on, we gave to you. You've basically bogged it in the reef the very first time you took it out for a spin. That's how your foreign aid money is being spent in this country.
Yeah.
Okay. Queensland budget. Okay, all I'm going to do here, I know this is cheap commentary, but I'm just going to go to the winners and losers page of the ABC. So the winners, according to the ABC, does not necessarily mean that these are winners. Cost of living, so, various sort of forms of middle-class welfare and whatnot. I think they do have energy rebates as well, as most state governments like to give away. Public transport, the 50-cent trips, remember them? Infrastructure, not a surprise there. They're putting a lot of money into that. First home buyers, just incentives there on the first home buyers grant, that kind of thing. The regions, interestingly enough, so more infrastructure programs for the regions. Electricity bills, of course, like I said, rebates, of course. Oh, and women, of course. So more money for domestic violence and family and sexual violence sector, stuff like that. The losers, the bottom line. So that just means that, the surplus has been reduced, so they're spending more money. Not a surprise there. Coal companies are losers. I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. They're basically shutting everything down. Housing supply, well, yeah. They're even the high density stuff. Like I said, they're facing hurdles getting that stuff approved. Property investors are a loser as well, interestingly enough. And that is because, well, the ABC says here, because of the land tax that the government is still making a lot of revenue from. Just one category for neutral, and that is health. So they are putting more money into the system, but they're saying that hospital activity is increasing at a pretty high rate, meaning that that level of funding is really only just sort of staying at pace with it. And like I said before, unusually, David Crisafulli, the opposition leader, is just sort of wholesale accepting everything in the budget. Very unusual thing to do when he had not even really looked at the detail yet.
Yep.
Okay. So I think last episode we covered the weird close your legs comment. It was actually cross your legs, referring to maternity services in Queensland hospitals and how some women were not able to find like a place when they were delivering their baby fast enough. That meant that caused one LNP. Yeah, believe it or not, that happens in Queensland. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, Queensland
Health,
actually.
you can say, is probably still a loser in Queensland because, pregnant women can't actually get a hospital bed fast enough. But anyway, LNP MP Ros Bates, this caused her to interrupt Shannon Fentiman, who I believe is the health minister, with the comment, cross your legs, suggesting that women should merely cross their legs when they're having a baby. It was a bit of a crude comment. But on social media, on Facebook and whatnot, Shannon Fentiman actually went and posted a snippet of that exchange in Parliament where she incorrectly captioned it, close your legs, instead of cross your legs. So that made it sound like, there was some sexual connotations to it, I guess, even though there wasn't. Now, Rosbate said that as a result of that social media clip going up, that had actually caused her abuse all the way up to death threats. When she made those comments in Parliament, she was then referred to the Ethics Committee because those comments were just seemed to be outrageous and possibly defamatory. Not legally defamatory, of course, because you have parliamentary privilege. But anyway, now Shannon Fentiman, the Labor MP who put the clip up on social media in the first place, she's been also referred to the Ethics Committee, which the ABC refers to as Parliament's powerful Ethics Committee. And that is because her video was potentially misleading. And that's because initially it said close your legs instead of cross your legs. She has since re-released the clip where it was correctly captioned with cross your legs. I don't know, but this is just another one where I'm like, my God, they're arguing over these pissy little things. And it's now gone to the Ethics Committee. They're really kind of making something out of nothing here. Okay. Did you hear about the award that Daniel Andrews got? So he was a recipient.
Fucking serious?
Companion of the Order of Australia. And this was to do with his leadership during COVID.
The other thing he's a fucking companion of is a companion of fucking twinks.
Yeah. So look, David Hurley, who is our Governor General, he's being petitioned by Jeff Kennett and I believe other people to revoke that award that was given to him. And it's also been pointed out that the Department of Premier and Cabinet Secretary Jeremy Moule is Victoria's representative on the Council of the Order of Australia. In other words, one of the people who voted to give Daniel Andrews the award came from the Department of Premier and Cabinet. Now, that said, there are 19 people who sit on that board. So his was only one vote of 19. But still, obviously we can count at least one person there who would have been biased.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, broadly the criticism is that, people say that Daniel Andrews was responsible for 800 deaths because of the botched hotel quarantine system that he overlooked. I would argue that had more to do with Aboriginal security services that were literally exchanging sex with people, letting them out of hotel quarantine in exchange for sex. Yes, that was real. That did happen.
It absolutely did fucking happen. It was atrocious.
Yes, it did. And
imagine being forced to have sex with an Aboriginal for your freedom.
Yeah, to be fair, some of them were. We don't know if they were all Aboriginal. Like it was like an Aboriginal-run business, and more than likely the people running it were only of part.
Have you heard the new term for because there's all these new fucking like subsidies, tax breaks, and quote unquote grants for Aboriginal-run businesses now, or at least they basically
new ones.
Yeah, new ones.
Maybe there's just more of them now.
Yeah, there's new ones now, and you know what the term they've come up with for like basically putting in like an Aboriginal CEO, but just having the CEO and CFO actually run the company?
No.
Black cladding.
Black plaiding.
Cladding. Cladding isn't like covering.
Right. Why, you think that's a racist term?
No, I think it's fucking funny because they basically at any point that they specify that like a certain race of people needs to be in charge of like businesses or a certain amount of businesses in an area. You get the same shit. South Africa, which has like a direct fucking saying like basically like a certain percentage of businesses have to be like fucking run by blacks. Of course. They just get a black CEO, fucking pay him a stipend. And the fucking the people directly under him actually run the company, and same in Indian territory in the United States. Same with in Malaysia, and the kind of the opposite way where the Malays have to actually run so much percentage of the company, but the Han Chinese are literally just sitting in the second like the right hand position, actually running the place.
Eugene Terreblanche, the hardcore Afrikaner in South Africa. He was the one he came up with like the triskelion, like the swastika with sevens in it. Well, you know how he was killed on his farm? Like he was like bludgeoned to death by like a couple of blacks.
Yeah.
That caused people to say, why the hell did he have blacks working on his farm? Well, it's because he had to. The laws say that you have to meet a quota for black employees, and that goes for Afrikaner farmers as well. And then he got into some pay dispute with them, and they just killed him. So that is why he's dead, because of those laws.
It reminds me of like how kind of Oriana like rides around, and I'm still not a huge fan of the concept of Oriana just because it seems like a slow burning defeat. But like they get around that by like basically contracting out blacks and then like temporarily listing them as employees, and then just they never actually show up to work, and they just get like a fucking small stipend for doing literally nothing.
Yeah, I mean, look, Orania is growing though. It started off with only a few hundred people, and I think they're like around 2,000 now or so, and still growing. So,
and I believe that the population is trending towards about 10,000 now. But the thing is, people confuse population with employees. Because technically, it's one giant company. Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow. Population. No, Wikipedia says it's still under 2,000, but maybe that's because of what you're talking about with the employees and that. But,
yeah,
oh, no, sorry. It's
Oriania
2,377.
Yeah, no. Oriania is a company. The area is actually called something else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the weirdest fucking thing, dude.
Property.
It's the weirdest fucking thing.
Yeah. Okay.
You'll need to talk to one of our buddies about it. I believe one of our buddies actually fucking went there a bit ago.
Yeah. Yep. I would love to go there. I'd love to see it. All right. So, Federal Liberal Party. So the Federal Liberal Party is scrambling to find a new candidate for the swing seat of Braddon, and this is a Peter Dutton ally, hard right guy, Gavin Pearce. He has only been in Parliament for 5 years, but he said he's just the toll of parliamentary life has been too much on him, so they're looking for a new candidate there, and they're hoping to still get another Peter Dutton backer. Now, there's also other issues where I believe they've said that the seat of Higgins is being abolished. That used to be a blue ribbon Liberal Party seat. It is now, by the way, it used to be Peter Costello's seat, so that should tell you how blue ribbon it was. But I believe with the new electoral boundaries, because they've got a pretty major shake-up going on at the moment, they're abolishing the seat of Higgins. I think they're also abolishing the seat of North Sydney as well, if I remember reading that, which is held by a Teal. So there's some pretty major electoral boundaries being sort of reshaped, and even electorates just being abolished completely. And that's definitely going to affect the makeup of Parliament the next time around. Like the borders of Bennelong have been changed, for example. Yeah. That used to be a safer Liberal seat. That was John Howard's seat. It then turned marginal in 2007 when Maxine McHugh, the ABC journalist, actually won it, actually defeated John Howard. So John Howard didn't just lose that election. He actually lost his own seat as well in 2007. But it's held by Labor at the moment. And I believe that it's held by like a 1% margin or something. So they're now calling it a notionally Liberal seat based on previous voting data and how the boundaries have been redrawn, that would actually bring in enough Liberal voters to push them slightly over the line, but only slightly. It still remains a marginal seat.
Notionally. That is such a fucking weird way to say that.
Yeah. But look, I think because I only read a story about this afternoon, and I'm sorry I did not put it in my prep, so we'll probably have more on all these boundaries being redrawn and everything next week for you. Okay, now here was actually one of my favorite stories of the week. So this is to do with the Federal Labor Party and the battle that they've got on their hands to save their, again, we're actually talking about what should be traditionally safe seats here in Western Sydney. Now, this is definitely what you would call a grassroots campaign by Muslims. So, who the Australian referred to as community leader Wessam Shakawi, he is mobilising the Muslim votes across key southwest Sydney federal seats to topple various Labor MPs. Of course, Western Sydney is Labor Party heartland. So this guy,
Because of
he's a sheikh. What?
I was going to say Western City, Labour Party Heartland, because of all the Arabs.
Yeah. So, I mean, here specifically, Western Sydney is a hodgepodge of all sorts of ethnicities. I remember when we did XYZ Live, I remember we covered this thing called the Postcode Wars, which was about all different ethnic gangs in all like the really rundown shit areas of Western Sydney. Because Western Sydney is a mix. There are good, sometimes it gets an unfair rap. There are good parts of Western Sydney. But, to be fair, there's a lot of crap parts too. But there are definitely like large ethnic enclaves of Arab Muslims. And they're not happy with the Labor Party's current stance on the Israel-Gaza conflict. So even though Sky News loves to call Labor Party a bunch of Palestinian activists and Hamas supporters and whatever, well, the actual Palestinian activists in Australia do not see it that way by any means whatsoever. If they did, then they would simply be supporting them and they wouldn't be trying to actively topple their members. So what they're doing now is they've got a website going where they actually rank various Western Sydney Labor MPs according to their stance on Israel and Palestine. So I haven't had a look at it, but it's basically like they give them a score for it. They'll tell you, is this person sufficiently pro-Palestine or not? And if they're not, then they're up as a target. And they want to look for independent candidates. They're not talking about forming a political party here, but they want to run independent Muslim candidates who run on a pro-Palestinian platform to topple Labor MPs who they consider to be too pro-Israel.
I should be changing my name legally to Hirsch Dar, and I'll be running an anti-Zionist campaign in the west of Sydney, in whatever electorate I can find. My campaign would be to return Germany to its former glory and reenact the plans of Hitler, which is to basically kick all of them to Madagascar and let them rot in the jungle.
Yeah, well, look, this guy... so Sheikh Shikari, he is a Muslim sheikh. He's a Sunni Muslim.
Chocolate or strawberry?
He's currently a Western Sydney University PhD candidate. So he's the brains behind all of this. He's actually called for the dismissal of Mike Burgess, the ASIO chief, because he said that Sunni Islamic extremism posed the greatest religiously motivated threat in Australia. Yeah, notice he said religiously motivated. Mike Burgess will tend to actually say that white nationalists are the worst national security threat in the country. So, yeah, I mean, look, I agree with you, Sheikh.
Mike Burgess went on a fucking pressing, his lips to the base of Jewish dicks tour. And you can tell exactly where his fucking bagel is buttered by the way he actually acted with those people.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
ECAJ,
really
AJA, and AJC.
That's why the pressure has somewhat been taken off white nationalists as of late, since October 7.
Yes. We've had a lot more breathing room. Thank you, Arab.
Yeah, because the pressure is sort of more on Australia's Muslim population now. And yes, Mike Burgess is still, he's definitely listening to the Jewish lobby as well. And yeah, so
I can go see my friends without my prostate being checked.
Anyway, they are actually looking at, to just give you some examples here, Jason Clare, his seat of Blacksland, remember he's the education minister, and Stanley's seat of Werriwa, that's actually Mark Latham's old seat, and also Tony Burke's seat of Watson, he's the IR minister. So you're talking about traditionally very safe Labor seats and also seats that produce, top-level Labor ministers, sometimes even opposition leaders. So, yeah, they're at risk. Yeah. So another very, very interesting thing to be monitoring when the election campaign rolls around next year. All right. Okay, now here's a sad story. Well, I'm sure we remember Citipointe Christian College, which is, they're not a Catholic college if I remember correctly. They are some Protestant denomination, but anyway, they're in Queensland.
Damn Pods could stay on that south.
2 years ago, approximately, they issued parents with a contract, which, by the way, was not even really a contract. It was more just like a value statement that they liked people to sign.
It had the fucking weight of those purity rings that, like, fucking they made One Direction sell back in the day.
Well, look, what it was about was it wanted the parents and the students of the school to adhere to the school's values and ethos. Wow, what a controversial thing. Now, one of the things written on that form was that homosexuality is a sin or is sinful. That was it. There was nothing in there about punishments for homosexual students or homosexual acts or anything like that. It was simply that they wanted people to agree to the value system that included the idea that homosexuality was sinful. That's it. That's all it was. Anyway, that caused an enormous ruckus. Initially, the school was standing by that so-called contract, but they capitulated eventually. They tore it up. I don't think they replaced it with anything. They just tore it up. And the principal of the school, Brian Mulheran, I think is his name. He resigned after that. After all that pressure was put on him, a number of parents pulled their students out of that school. Now, I would say that the parents pulling the kids out of the school, that should have been considered a win for the school at that point, because if you don't agree to that value system, you shouldn't be there. The parents shouldn't enroll their kids there. You've got a problem with it, don't send your kids to that school. And that is part of the reason you send them to a Christian school, isn't it? Otherwise, what's so Christian about it?
It's because that's your religion. That was actually one of the weird things about going to like an Anglican school myself was Jews.
What, there were Jews enrolled there?
A lot of Jews. Absolute shit ton of Jews.
And a lot of the time
Jews,
it's just like,
etc.
Parents look to, they're simply, like the Christian schools are, they're
Muslims?
always private, and private schools just often are the better alternative in whatever area you tend to live in. It's better than the public school alternative. So, yeah. Anyway, the school has since put out a statement and also has reached a settlement. So I'll just read out parts of the statement here. So they've acknowledged that contract and the parts of it were distressing to members and allies of the LGBTIQA plus community. God, they actually wrote that.
Why are you fucking faggots in that school in the first place? Go to your fag school where they teach you about butt sex and fucking folding your ankles behind your head.
Yeah, which is basically any public school, by the way. It's not like you don't have a choice. So we regret any distress or concern which was caused to students, parents, or guardians of students or prospective students of the college, which includes those within the college community that are members of the LGBTIQA plus community and their families and their allies. Oh my God. All that language is straight out of like the fag playbook, like all that so-called inclusive language. They're so careful to make sure they've got all of that in there. Now, I mentioned that this wasn't just a statement, it was also a settlement. Well, that means that they've actually provided a donation to a charity that provides training on youth mental health issues. Although the sum of that money and the charity's name have not been disclosed. So let me
Probably for a
guess
reason.
that sum of money was quite large. And I would also say that that charity was some fag charity, whatever it might have been.
Boy Lovers Anonymous.
I'm not surprised they didn't disclose it because that would just be a further embarrassment for them. But yeah, that's the outcome that we got 2 years after all of this. I thought that we basically just heard the end of this. The principal resigned. They tore up that statement. That was it. 2 years later, people are still calling for blood from them, and they're still capitulating. All right. So on the social media, so Twitter is going to be able to continue to host the graphic video of the that Assyrian priest or whatever he is getting stabbed.
Franking his hog.
Yeah. Now that is because the attempted takedown and the court action taken by the e-safety commissioner has been abandoned. They basically think it's not worth it. They're not going to win. They're spending too much time and money on it, and it's just going to prove futile. So she did, however, I forget this woman's full name, Inman something, got a hyphenated name. She's saying, though, that still the fight is not over here. The focus is now going to be on an independent review of the issue. I don't know what the hell good that would do. I mean, these videos are basically held on a server in California, and I don't see what hope you've got of them deleting it or taking it down. Okay. And yes, it is impractical to serve a global takedown order, for a multinational company that is obviously accessed by people all around the world. Okay, so the coalition is going to go to the next election with a policy to block anyone who is aged under 16 from having a social media account. And as far as I know, that means any social media.
Good.
Facebook, Instagram,
Fucking good.
TikTok. Yeah. So they're now calling on the Labor Party to show bipartisan support here. They're saying that this should be an issue where they can find common ground, because the Labor Party have also been quite critical of the toxic effects of social media on young people. And I think I agree with you. I think that's a good policy. Social media is toxic for a range of reasons. I would say I would put stabbing videos at the bottom of that list, though. I think there's just... look, I think, I've said before, I think Instagram is the worst one. I think, Instagram and the fact... Do you remember we covered that school that, they produced a spreadsheet on, how hot individual female students were? Do you remember that? A few weeks ago.
I made the comment. It was like it's like Facebook, the original purpose of Facebook, but
yes,
far too late.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, that was basically a spreadsheet version of what Instagram is. Okay, because Facebook did actually start off as like a hot or not type platform, didn't it? Like just rating people according to their looks or whatever. And look, that is extremely damaging to teenage girls psychologically.
It is.
Constantly comparing themselves and putting themselves in competition with other girls. And then, it also comes down to things like, you're going to get a higher score if you show a bit of skin on your profile or something like that. I don't think I need to describe how that is detrimental to a young girl's psychology. I think
Ramona Flowers destroyed an entire generation of women.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there's going to be a huge fucking uproar over a spreadsheet being produced that rates female students according to their attractiveness, why do we tolerate 13-year-old girls on Instagram then? Because that's effectively what they're engaged in the exact same thing. So yeah, no, I agree.
Let me. I'm
in
just going
fact,
to
I say
Google something real quick.
probably too old. Like, why don't we? Too young. Why don't we make it 18 plus? You know.
All right. Okay. BPD rates in women. Let's see from the launch of Facebook in the late aughts. Holy fucking shit! It tracks perfectly.
Well, do you remember
it starts in 2005. The trend upwards starts in 2005, but holy fucking shit. Bipolar disorder is now up 250,000 times than it was pre-2005, then post-2005. I wonder what fucking happened around about that period of time.
Well, remember Meta tried to actively block that data that showed that a significant amount of mental health issues in girls was directly linked to both Facebook and Instagram. You know, they tried to cover it up. So yeah, that is one policy I guess I would agree with the coalition and maybe even Labor on, because they may get bipartisan support with that. Okay, just a couple more stories for you. We're nearly done. So on defense, part of the AUKUS collaboration with the United States and Britain is that we have been making multi-billion-dollar contributions to both countries to help expand our submarine industrial base. That basically means that at some point we're supposed to be given nuclear submarines because we're never going to be able to manufacture them ourselves. Now, I hate David Shoebridge. He's a Greens senator, but he did actually bring this up in Senate estimates hearing. He wants to know if there's any refund guarantee on any of this. So far, we have made $4.7 billion worth of payments to the US head of the Australian Submarine Agency, and we actually have nothing that guarantees that in the event that they don't give us any submarines or anything else, we don't have any guarantee that we get that money back. Now, when Shoebridge was asking these questions of the ASA boss, what's this guy's name? Vice Admiral Jonathan Meade, he repeatedly refused to say. He dodged the question and just went off in other directions. So interesting, you got to ask yourself the question, is this Australia just getting fucked over in this so-called international alliance where the US and the UK are just kind of bleeding us for our funds? It could well be.
Well, it's
now,
again.
I don't know what to make of this, but
do you think it's going to be white fucking dudes from the UK? Do you think it's going to be white fucking dudes from Canada? Do you think it's going to be white fucking dudes from the US joining the ADF? Because white fucking dudes in Australia are not joining the ADF.
No, why would they? There's no country worth defending.
No,
and that goes to pretty much any Western country, by the way. Not just
let this fucking entire country burn because it's worth nothing. Let Canada burn. Let the United States burn. Let the UK fucking burn as a state because it's not worth defending.
Right. Now, let's see. I don't know what to make of this, but military data has revealed that more than 1/3 of female recruits report sexual misconduct while attending training in the ADF. So this was a 2021 workplace survey. It said almost 2/3 of women at the ADF also reported being subject to any unacceptable behavior, while 1/4 of female recruits experience bullying. Now, look, I know a lot of the time these surveys are voluntary, and so therefore women who say have been harassed or whatever, or simply want to say that they've been harassed, they're the ones who are likely.
Same story with the university ones. Yeah, the only ones who respond are the ones who are have an agenda.
Yeah. or in the rare cases actually were abused. I mean, there's not much motive. If you were not abused or not harassed or assaulted or whatever, there's not that much motivation for you to do one of these surveys, you know.
Dude, it's the
Anyway.
fucking military. Shut up and just admit you're a barracks bunny and get over it.
Well, okay, look, they're saying, Nosey, actually, what you just said there is part of the problem, because they say that it's like a boys' club and it's accepted that, you know, you treat women like that in that boys' club and you don't question it. You just go along with it. So
That's not how that works at all.
No.
But, yeah, okay, I guess, you know. I don't know.
Well,
maybe we need to get some good old fashioned hard hitting ADF guys on the show, and or at least ex ADF, because Jesus Christ, you're not going to fucking deal with like you know, current service ADF dudes.
Right.
But yeah, no, yeah, and just actually, like, you know, give us a rundown on like how this shit works, because I guarantee you, it's not how it's being explained here.
Right, but I mean, look, you also made the point that white people are less likely now to join the military, but
Yes.
you know, people are still, I mean, they've got a hard time getting new recruits, but people still are joining. And, you know, that would cause me to say, well, okay, if there is actually this, you know, high rate of sexual misconduct or whatever, is that being caused by the fact that the military is getting darker all the time?
I mean, as it currently stands, I don't think so. I think their recruiting problem is occurring because they can't recruit enough white guys. I mean, I spoke earlier on this show about a case where I knew of a white guy who applied and got washed out because of, like, you know, basically, like, you know, fuck you, white person reasons. I got through the grapevine that they actually gave him a request to come back and reapply now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, look,
so they're looking. The thing is, he's saying no, and rightfully so. As I advised him to, I said, "Say no, don't do it. Just go and do something else." But the problem is, like, there currently isn't Indians in it, and the only reason why there would be Indians joining is because it's just a transfer program. This what you're seeing right here between, like, oh, like, we will recruit from these other friendly nations. It's not, you know, like, oh, we particularly care about bolstering our military and etc. We've always been a boutique army. You know, going back as the entire history of Australia, we've always been a boutique army. But the main thing is, this is just like a fucking transfer program for Indians.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is.
You know, like
you're an Indian in Canada?
I would not be surprised if domestic violence rates in Australia genuinely are going up. And that's just, you know, we mentioned on last episode of the one before about how it's finally starting to be recognized now that Indians have a high rate of domestic violence. And that's why all of these, women's refuge centers for South Asian women have suddenly popped up over East. Because, yes, they do. They are violent people. They may not have a reputation for it, but, yes, Indians are violent. And, you know, that's why I just say I wouldn't be surprised if that were to seep into the ADF as well. You know, maybe it's not happening now, but it probably will.
The proudest moment I've had, and, you know, one of my proudest moments is turning to a recruiter and saying, "I don't want to die for Israel," and literally seeing him, like, fucking, like, burn up internally.
Okay, let's go. We just got two more stories for you. Oh yeah, so this one,
gays and a whore.
Yeah, well, not really anything on Brittany Higgins, just on Bruce Lehrman today. But yeah, before we end on that one, in New South Wales, Chris Minns, the Premier, has made a formal apology in Parliament to people who were convicted of homosexual acts. So it was pretty much exactly 40 years ago now that homosexuality was decriminalised in New South Wales. That was by the Labor Rann government, Neville Rann. And at the time, if you were actually convicted under one of those laws, you could also just basically get released. You just make an application and you could get out of jail or whatever it was. And yes, you were. Like, you could be sent to jail for that. So this was a part of the Crimes Act 1900 entitled Unnatural Offences. So it punished anyone who committed the, quote, abominable crime of buggery with mankind. And the maximum sentence was 14 years in jail. So how about that? The abominable crime of buggery. So sodomy, I guess. Yeah, that could land you a big jail sentence. And look, by the way, it was pretty similar in every other state and territory in the country. New South Wales have just been a bit later to the mark in offering a formal apology. For example, here in WA, that was given back in 2017. So, Chris Minns said, recognises and regrets this Parliament's role in enacting laws and endorsing policies of successive governments' decisions that criminalised, persecuted and harmed people on their sexuality and gender. He acknowledged there is still much more work to do to ensure the equal rights of all members of the LGBT alphabet soup community. Now, the one openly gay member of the New South Wales Parliament, Alex Greenwich, who of course is suing Mark Latham, he basically said, okay, well, I know how you can do that. So he's got a private members bill before the New South Wales Parliament at the moment. He's called it an equality bill. So that includes banning religious schools from firing LGBT teachers and preventing students from being expelled for coming out as gay. Right. Now, on the first one, banning them from firing those teachers, no. In fact, I would say gay people should be banned from being teachers, full stop. I would make it so that any...
I want to ban the gay entirely. The gay is banned from my Christian Minecraft server.
Any job where you work with children, homosexuals should be banned from. That's what I would do. But the second point though, where he says preventing students from being expelled for coming out as gay. Alex Greenwich, I would like you to tell me, can you name me one example of when that has ever happened in this country ever? I would love to see it. I mean, they talk about it all the time.
You Christ nets, I want to talk about Catholic priests and molesting children. Yeah, what sexuality were the Catholic priests?
Right. But, I mean, when this was being...
Also, like priests molesting children. Okay, let's bring up public school teachers.
They're all gay. All of these examples that they bring up, like when they go, oh, well, why are you against
pretty fucking damn gay?
When churches, priests are molesting boys and everything, it's like, yeah, what we're talking about is keeping homosexuals away from children. Those priests you're talking about are homosexuals. And yes, we want to keep them away from children too.
Less than a percentage of the population, 42% of fucking child molesters.
Yeah. Now, there is very clear data on that. But I mean, basically,
even GLAD had to admit that.
But there.
Yeah. It was like the family. It was like the Family Institute were the first one to put it out, and then GLAD would try to do a counter study for it, and then they had to admit it was like, okay, yeah, actually no, GLAD, no. So the Center for Families is actually correct on this.
Oh, the Family Research Institute.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah. Who do well? They did. They basically don't publish anything anymore, which is a shame
because they're all the shit.
Well, it's also because the guy who runs it, Paul Cameron, I think is his name. He's like nearly 90 now, and he just, and he doesn't. Unfortunately, he doesn't really have much support. He was basically doing all that stuff himself. But, no, but when the religious freedom debate was going on before the last election, where Scott Morrison was supposed to introduce a religious freedom bill and never did, mainly because of people in his own party like Bridget Archer. One of the things they kept going on about was the idea of schools expelling or suspending children who were gay. But the entire debate, they never actually gave an example of where that's happened. Not one. You know why? Because it doesn't happen. Even religious schools, back when they were able to actually say publicly that they thought homosexuality was a sin, they never expelled gay children, gay students. It just didn't happen. Never happened. Okay, so last story. Bruce Lehrmann, in case you don't know, when he was going to be interviewed for the Spotlight program on Channel 7, so they kind of had exclusive rights to his words, they put him up in an apartment for about a year that I believe they were spending about $1,000 on each week. So that was part of the agreement. They put him up in that. Yeah, like Channel 7 paid for that. So he lived in it for free for like a year.
So like a decent fucking salary for a year, all right.
Yeah. So no wonder he did the interview. But he's now on the hook for a $13,250 damages bill. So the person, what do you call them, the lessor, the person who was leasing, who owned the property, apparently didn't know that Bruce Lehrmann was the one going to be living there. But anyway, they said that during that time, over 13 grand worth of damage was done to the apartment. Now, I read through this whole article, and there was no detail in there. It didn't even say if, Lehrmann was directly responsible for it, but I assume he'd have to be. This is another one where I'm just looking at it thinking there has to be more to this. What? Why would Lehrmann trash that room, that apartment room, and cause that? That's a shitload of fucking damage, over 13 grand worth. So I have no idea what's going on there, and I look forward to getting more detail on it later on. Okay, well. Yes, it was a big news week. We've gone just over 3 hours. So, thank you for that. Good. Thank you for listening to us on episode 220. Please check us out at theracer.biz, and we'll see you in roughly a week's time. See you later.